Okay, they should be able to hear me online now. This thing is very good. My wife was testing it in the car the other day, so it shouldn't catch too much ambient. We'll see. What's up? Great. That's good enough. I sound like Kermit the Frog, but hey, what can you do? Nothing I can do about that now.
Was it you I was talking to that made the original document, the PDF from Word?
Yep. This you don't have a do you have a physical copy? Did you get one?
No.
So this is a print-on-demand version, unfortunately. So it is not quite as lustrous as the original, but that was 100% done in Word.
I remember looking through the PDF and thinking, holy crap.
It was a fucking struggle. But I thought at some point I'm going to stop doing this, just continue writing, and let someone else take over, and it just never got there. But then the end result is fantastic. I'm quite happy with it. And so for the 77 stories, when that one came out, I just asked I paid someone to do the layout, gave her the copy, but I said just copy this layout, and she was able to recreate it pretty closely, and it cost me significantly less because she didn't have to create anything. She was just kind of like rejigging it. Printing it turned out okay, but I couldn't end up do print on demand by myself. You need an InDesign, like a professional format, to do print on demand. So
Drive-through's pretty picky on that.
yeah. So this is cool. This was my original playtest document.
Oh, nice.
Here, I only have one copy left, and I had to reprint that because I couldn't find any of them. But that goes back to 2020, 2021, something like that. So it's all stolen art. It's not live online anymore because it is just stolen art. But I encourage everyone to do that.
Way closer to what I could afford then.
Yeah, even that was functional, right?
I still get a single image in the Federated States overall.
Well, drop placeholders in, man. It really helps because then you'll be able to figure out. I mean, that's what we're talking about today, but you'll start to get a sense of your budget, what you need to spend. Okay, this is gonna be 50, 50, 50, 100. Okay, there is 2 people in here. That's great. Yeah, good.
That's your numbers already.
Yeah. Well, since we're doing show and tell, these are the collector's editions. So the first collector's edition, I redid the whole interior as well in a different layout, which took me an extra 6 months. And so I just said, fuck it, and didn't do it for this one. Because people actually ended up not liking this interior as much as the original. So I went to all this work. It's very cool, but it's very different. Sure.
I mean, this definitely has more of a vibe of like a.
I was going for Kurosawa.
I was going to say deluxe edition.
Yeah. The interior is the same on that one, yeah. You guys have a copy of that, right? Yeah. What the heck? I got number 12.
Sure. Very cool stuff. I have to admit, the original core definitely catches people's attention more.
Yeah,
But this would be like a nice extra piece.
it's pretty.
Like the binding's way higher quality than the competition.
Yeah, I mean, so that was printed in a short run, only 60, I think, by Mixam. My original they have Canadian, US, and UK publishing, so I think that those are printed in the UK. MIXAM.
Look how quickly I'm recognizing old art.
Oh yeah, just from your own searching around and
Overwatch, Killzone,
Yeah.
Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
That's how everything starts.
Overwatch kind of threw me for a loop. Yeah. Also, just seeing the difference of the mechanics.
yeah, let's test the table mic, guys.
Hello, hello.
Hold on one second, I gotta turn it on.
Fair enough.
Hey, Phoenix.
Okay, how is the sound? Can you guys do some talking?
Testing,
Hello.
testing, 1, 2, 3.
What's everyone working on, anyways? What game is everyone working on?
Well, I've yet to actually get it off the ground, but
Yeah.
like I've yet to just sit down and write it. But I was thinking of writing a short horror TTRPG called Death is Patient.
Okay.
And the entire premise was that you would have a dice pool on your character sheet, and that would kind of represent your stamina and or stress levels. So as you keep making more and more rolls, you're losing what resources and vigor you have to your person. And literally the system was as simple as pick up the dice, as many as as I called it, the dice master told you, don't roll a 1.
Don't roll a 1.
That was it. If any of the dice land on a 1, your task fails.
So you want to roll less dice.
You want to roll less dice, exactly. So if the risk was 4 dice, relatively high. And when I tested that, some of my friends, man, did bodies drop very quickly. The 3-player game was maybe 3 hours and only 1 emerged.
That's perfect.
But that's what I wanted.
Sounds about
That's
right.
exactly what I wanted.
Guys, this is my mom, Kate. Comes out to support everything I do, and she's one of our editors. So, original contributor.
Any mistakes are mine.
But you get what you pay for, right?
Exactly. And I am an English teacher, so
Very cool.
I did try my best. But you always miss something.
You know what? It just shows that it's done by a human. Which is a good thing. That's a compliment, not
The
a...
next person that criticizes my editing, that's what I'm going to say to them. It wasn't ChatGPT.
Exactly.
Really? How about yourselves? What are you just working on?
I'm running a cyberpunk campaign. So
In what system? Like Cyberpunk Red?
Cyberpunk Red, yeah.
Cool.
I have like a full Miro board.
Red is very
Like,
heavy on this, creating all of the skills. It was just a bit too heavy for me.
It's certainly a dense system.
It's very dense. Like I'm okay playing it. I do not see myself running it in the foreseeable future.
We gotta go real light with it.
Especially when the video game came out and it's so well done.
It really
And I've got
depends on the
people my
session.
age, so they're all
Sometimes
playing the
you're
video game
really
already.
gung-ho.
Me?
Yeah.
Okay, I can be.
Like, sometimes you have like the nicest, most peaceful sessions, and sometimes it's like, what the hell?
Goes back.
Thank you, sir. Beauty.
Like, God, what was it? We had that one session where it's like, oh yeah, you hear like all the motorcycles arriving outside. It's like, oh yeah, we're gonna track your house. And it's like, oh, they didn't make it to us yet? Okay, well, let's just leave.
Yeah.
I'm amazed you didn't have them attack us sooner.
Yeah, but they had to get across Night City, so everything.
We probably spent like a solid hour prepping. Oh, we're home alone that entire apartment building. Well, not the entire apartment, the entire apartment unit.
Okay, turning the table mic off. Hell mic back on. Okay, 15 minutes. So it's my goal, like, you could write a 300-page book from what we're going to talk about today. So with only so few of us here, and I don't know how many people are going to show up online, we can definitely make it a round table now, which is more useful for you guys at least. Yeah, exactly. So I'll start by going into things and just kind of start blah, blah, blahing. But because there isn't a lot of people, we can just do a kind of hands up question, pause, wait, hey, Russ, that kind of thing. So nothing formal about it. Yeah, I'm not going to go around and do an introduction for everybody, just assuming that you probably don't care that much. But if you want to share your projects, we'll put them all into links at the bottom of the stream later on.
Sure.
For all the millions of viewers we're going to get. Yeah, exactly.
On the bright side, there's less people stealing content potentially.
That's one of my points, is don't worry about anyone stealing your content. Yeah.
The amount of work it takes to get something from an idea to being done
is all the work.
If they stole it and made it, like, kudos.
It's theirs. Yeah. Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that'd be ideal.
You know what? As long as they make an open license, all the way for them.
Yeah.
That too.
They've done the hard work.
Yeah. Yeah. There you go. I mean, so little of it is copyrightable, anyways.
Yeah.
That
story setting. That's about it.
Capitalized nouns is basically it. Yeah. That's the way I look at it. Names, places, history, people, that kind of shit.
Yeah, but if you actually steal it, usually communities pick up on that.
Steal what?
Like other people's work.
Oh, well, but I mean, the best part about best part. The thing that most developers are proud of are their mechanics. And the mechanics are the things you can't copyright and tend to be the weakest part of most games anyways. But
everyone's got a solution for you.
Yeah, exactly. It's just considered like weird watching the live cast a minute later.
Yeah.
Like I'm watching the live feed here on OBS, which I learned last night.
Well, at least OBS is fairly simple.
I'm a carpenter and a sailor, so anything with plugs is advanced technology for me.
I worked as a factory worker. They drove trucks for like 7 years before I started doing what I'm doing now.
Yeah?
Learned everything about tech over COVID.
Amazing. Good switch.
Interesting switch.
Yeah.
Then I started paying me more. That was the part that blew my mind.
That's incredible, man. Congratulations. That's so cool. And so do you do most of it online? Matthew does, he's a paid DM. Like a full-time living.
Yeah.
Fuck yeah.
Yeah, I have a house, got kids, got a...
Congratulations. Yeah, because people ask me about that. Oh, is this viable? I think somebody on our server actually is just going through the process to try to become that. Yes, share these out, man. Share these out.
Phoenix is out here trying to fucking drill you.
Yeah, fair enough, Phoenix. Yeah. Yeah, so actually, because I won't be paying attention necessarily, if there's anything that warrants me weighing in, questions, funny comments, criticism that can't just be ignored or brushed off. Ahoy, y'all. Welcome. Thanks for signing in.
So Cyber's joining us. Cyber is Runico in
Yeah.
Rise of Shadows.
Yeah. Recognize the character there.
Same.
I might get around to, because my wife and I run a sailboat charter and a photo booth company.
Okay.
And this thing doesn't really make any money. So we're not as busy in the winters. And so January, February, March, we have a little bit of time to fuck around on our projects. And she does videography and photography. And I
Which is cool.
try to do this. Like last year I did the 77.
Yeah.
This year I will be happy if I can get you guys out a DM screen. Half done. It's half done. Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
A good DM screen is bloody useful.
I'll get you a DM screen. Yeah. No, and then I'll have feedback and accept it all. Hi there. It has not. 10 minutes.
Plenty of time.
Yeah. You can sit wherever you like. You may end up on a camera if you're closer in, but if you don't mind, then okay. Well, yeah, you're welcome to grab a seat anywhere. Nope. No, all good. Danny, what's going on, sir?
Not much.
We have about 10 minutes.
Yeah. Way players may just come with a hopefully drink and just enjoy it.
Oh, well, welcome. What's your name? Hannah. I'm Russ. Nice to meet you.
I want to buy NewEdo, but I want to get old Edo first. How do I go about doing that?
Well, that's just called Edo.
Oh.
Yeah. So
Okay.
start your search there, and you'll be able to find something.
Oh, thank you.
There's a story on why it's called NewEdo.
Right?
Yeah.
You should save that. Yeah.
Well, we only have 3 hours, and if I start storytelling, we're not going to get any real fucking value out of today. Yeah. Oh, online? Oh, I'm sorry about that. Did you just recently do that?
Like 2 days ago.
I don't think I can refund you, but I'll make it right. I'll figure it out. Okay?
It's okay. I just think it's kind of funny.
My apologies. Well, I mean,
The best of ever.
yeah. Let me see. What do I have here I can give you? You want a pair of sunglasses? Ooh, here. I know. By way of apologies, these got given out during the 77 Kickstarter campaign, and they were only for people that ordered during the Kickstarter campaign. But there you go. For overpaying for something that you didn't have to. You may have to share that on camera later because I brought that for show and tell. Okay.
So I had an idea about making a TTRPG that's based around like doing art. Like your character is a piece of art that you're making throughout the game. You start with like a couple minutes to start an art project, and then as you level up, you get more time to work on it.
Neat.
Okay, cool, man. I think COVID did this industry so much good because people found the time to play it, have the guts to try something new. A million things got put out. The only reason that NewEdo got published is because of COVID. I got paid to stay home and do nothing by my job back when I had one.
You did.
And yeah, and so I sat on my lawn, drank beer, and finished NewEdo. It'd been one of these projects that I figured I'd never finish. A buddy of mine that runs Cardboard Dungeon games, he ran a Kickstarter and made a couple of grand. He's like, "You should do this with NewEdo." I'm like, fuck, I don't have time for that. I'm not going to do that, whatever. And then COVID hit, and I found all the time in the world, and sat on my lawn and finished it, and played it, and all of that.
You sat on the lawn to do it. You were even outside.
I went outside. I like being outside. Yeah. And yeah, and then it blew up. The first Kickstarter was in the middle of COVID when everybody had government money, and or staying at home from work and not doing anything money. Right? You can't go to a restaurant. You can't go on vacation. You can't take a flight. So people had cash in those first year or two. It was, and like I did that second Kickstarter 2 years ago, and it went from 33 to 8 grand, and I thought it'd be slightly more because you have a following now. But the first thing was just the timing was right. I think with people having the money, having the time. Yeah, exactly. Howdy. Yeah, you're good, man. You look like the dude.
Cool.
Yeah, that's a good thing. There is a cord that runs right here, so there's not a seat there. You're welcome to sit over here, or sit back there, wherever. I do have a slot for you to weigh in your comments on your joys of publishing.
Oh, okay.
Or attempts so far.
Yeah, sure.
If you choose to do so. Sorry, Hannah, I missed your description of what your game was supposed to be. Your concept.
It's based around like your character being a piece of art. You start with a limited amount of time to make your character, and that's your original character creation.
Okay.
And then as you level up, you get more time to add to your art piece.
Yeah.
And kind of like the class system for it is based on the medium that you're working with, and you can use multiple mediums for like multiple
Cool. So you actually have to make the art of your character, though? That would immediately exclude me from a lot of people from the game.
it doesn't have to be a drawing of your character.
So does art have like a very
Like broad interpretation? Like could it be like a poem or like a?
So I've categorized it in 6 different areas. Like
I don't know it, but
so based off of like rhythm, melody, sound. Woven, if you create something, it doesn't have to look like a person.
Yeah.
It has to
Some
be
games got real meta.
Just has to be.
I bet, yeah.
writing, shaping, making something from glass or wood or clay. Illustrate, this is where you can draw something.
Yep.
Or kinetic, even if you do like a little dance move, suddenly your dance move is a character.
Performance art.
Yes.
So people are limited by the time that you give them to create those characters. So you've got 3 minutes, create a character, do a dance, do a sketch, make something out of clay, what have you, and it's rough. And then at the end of session 1, you give them 2 more minutes. Is that how it works?
Essentially.
Yeah, the time units, whatever, different, 2 minutes, 20 minutes, 2 hours, whatever. And then the character gets better by the piece of art getting better.
Yes.
That's very unique.
That is really fascinating.
And that's what I do.
Cool. So how far are you?
Well, I had like a big ADHD spurt of hyper focusing on it for a while.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
Games
me.
get made.
And so I've gotten, I don't have like a lot of solid things, but I have a bit of a magic system already made. And
Okay.
a concept of like where your character falls in like levels of different creatures in the world and what the world is like.
Just before we start.
Frozen.
Frozen.
Okay.
That's about right. You're ready to start. So
Just about ready to start, yeah. That's going to happen. Then I can always put you guys on cam. Can I? There we go. Hey, when I freeze, we can go to you guys. Wave at the internet. Okay.
There we go.
Okay, good.
I'm at like the end.
Mine is literally just roll dice pool, kill people. Mine.
There's a business portion of this workshop that I look forward to. I'm
Okay.
drawing a Comic-Con and I don't know what to do with it. I just have a card.
Yeah, Andre took his game like to the publishable stage almost, and then started looking for publishers, and they're like, "Oh yeah, no, we don't do that."
you can always self-publish. We're in that era.
You can always look like
Right, and so that's what my advice is. But I didn't even try to go down agent and pitching and stuff like that. So I wouldn't mind if you took a couple minutes to explain that.
Sure.
I've got a slot for you later on. Are we back up?
I'm happy to talk about that for sure.
A slight echo.
Oh, I probably have both mics on. One sec. Okay. Well, we are almost live. Interesting. Oh, I don't know what's going on there. I've got an inset cam. Yeah, okay, that's different. Good. There we go. Looks like it's working. How's it look, Andrew?
Just need time for the stream to catch up.
Okay.
No, it's still an echo.
Still in echo.
Is it gonna be on the camera? Is there a mic on it?
Yes. Thank you. Good call. That should do it. Okay. Well, welcome. Thanks everybody for coming. Thanks everyone online. That looks like all 7 of you. You guys are awesome. Appreciate everyone being here. I'm Russ, aka Salty from Salty Games. Most of you probably know me, considering the limited numbers here. But for the folks millions of folks who will be watching this later, I was lucky enough to work on a book for quite a long time, starting in 2016, and in 2021 ran a Kickstarter for it. It ended up being published, and we're here today because we're in a game store in my hometown. It is friendly. I'm going to switch the cam just to show everybody. Wave everybody, you're on live now. Yeah. In the background is Mecha Games, who has been a huge supporter of me in this process. They help with token printing, they put my book on the shelf, all that good stuff. So I was fortunate enough to live up to a dream that a lot of us indie devs have, is going from taking something that you've written and played with your friends to actually having physical copies of it to show off. Today will be about a little bit about the game development process. There's a lot of amazing resources out there for people who are writing games. So a lot people smarter than me as well. I've only published the one game here, but there's fewer resources I've found about the business end of things, which is what we're going to focus a little bit more on. The first half we'll talk about some high level concepts of game development and some pitfalls that I would advise you to avoid. The game development part of this will be more of a things not to do than things to do, because there's just so many ideas out there that we've got 3 hours here, which may seem like a long time to you poor bastards listening to me, is certainly not enough time to get into details of any game development beyond just some pitfalls to avoid if possible. There is 8 people in the room with me and maybe another 8 or 12 online at the moment. I do have a moderator, Andrew, who will be helping out with any online questions. So everyone in the room here and everyone online is encouraged to ask questions, and we may eventually get to them, depending on what part of my screed or rant or ramble I'm currently in. With that being said, let's get into it. So, NewEdo, about a week after I posted this event in March or April, something like that, became a platinum bestseller on DriveThruRPG, which puts it in the top 2% books of all games sold on DriveThruRPG. It sounds impressive. The number is only 1,000, but it's still impressive as far as percentages go. Now, there's something like 50,000 titles published on DriveThruRPG, so that still puts me in a fairly large cohort, but it's the kind of thing that I never expected to be able to do. You hear something like that as an indie developer sitting around your table, and you think, oh, wow, he's a platinum bestseller. He must freaking drive a fancy car, make tons of money doing this, quit his other jobs. Totally no. My first Kickstarter raised $33,000, and I spent every penny of it and probably a bit more, which is a conversation for a bit later today. I managed it relatively well, but certainly didn't set anything aside for myself. And the money that is raised from the game so far, I'm just keeping it aside in a very low dollar amount for my next developments. Something we'll get into later is spending money on art. It is important to make your game look professional if you ever want to publish it or crowdfund it. So I keep a kitty on the side for basically paying my next artist. Things I did right and things I did wrong with NewEdo. I'm going to go through these because everyone that's developing a game or has developed one will identify with one of these, or at least take the things that I've done wrong and make note of them to hopefully not do yourself. Things I got right with NewEdo. I started building the lore early on. I was writing fiction, very terrible fiction, for this way back while I was actually traveling around the world, which gave me a bit of inspiration. The fiction was terrible, but the game world was born from it and got flushed out. I came home from my travels and actually threw a bunch of my friends into a D&D 5e campaign that I intended to be the backstory for what my game would eventually become. They were writing the history for NewEdo as it is now. It was just Edo. Now it's NewEdo. That history, that world depth, really is something that you can pull out of the game if you're paying attention. Not everyone gives a shit. Sometimes you'll just skip the settings section. But having all that long history, one, helps build a community, which is something that we'll get into heavily here, which is absolutely key to making this a success. And two, really gets us vested in it as we go on, keeps you interested, keeps you having fun, takes some of the work out of it. This does become a job. You know, I play less role-playing games now than I do work like this to develop this game, which is a bit of a disappointment, but Anyways, early lore building and then early play testing. I got done that 5e campaign, said, okay, guys, all your characters are dead. Let's fast forward 400 years, and now you're in NewEdo. And they're like, because all they wanted to do was play 5e. But they loved their characters, and the world I had built was suitable, such that they're like, okay, let's just see what he's going to do with this bullshit. Trick them into it, and they enjoyed it. Playtesting is hard. Getting playtesters that aren't part of your table is incredibly hard, but incredibly important. I expanded out to get beta testers at that point. That was a community thing, community outreach. It's scary as hell, but something you absolutely have to do if you want your game to be a good game. I thought about marketability. We're still on the things I did right. Don't worry, there's lots that I did wrong. The game was originally set in Toronto, where I was living prior to my travels. Toronto's a big, clean, friendly city. I was going to be about vampires and werewolves because I grew up playing World of Darkness, and I realized that nobody gave a shit about Toronto. So if I ever wanted anyone to read the book, I had to set it somewhere that people's imaginations would fill in the details that my writing did not. If I set this game in Toronto, anyone that was not from Southern Ontario, and most people that are, I would have to describe every corner of the city because people's imaginations have trouble filling in the details of that blank gray city. I accidentally went to Tokyo and realized that this game I was writing needed to be set somewhere where I didn't have to fill in the details. Whether we have the same imagination or the same picture in our heads as we imagine Tokyo, we all can fill in details. They're probably wrong, but it doesn't matter. Everybody thinks like, oh man, they've got this over here and blah, 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 and robot cats and lasers and neon and all that. And it's easy. It makes it a lot easier to fill in those details. So I intentionally did that one because it was good for a target audience. I mapped out the stats. Sorry, there's a cord there. Grab one of the chairs. My apologies. I intentionally thought early on, how hard do I want this game to be from a player perspective? Do I want players failing daily or hourly at a Souls kind of rate where you roll up a new character, medium difficulty, or very easy where every story is a fluffy narrative that we're here to jointly storytell, but the dice rolling doesn't really matter and there's no threat. I landed somewhere in the middle with that. But fine-tuned it to play, having explicitly discussed with my playtesters, saying, this is what I'm aiming for. Does it feel like that? How hard does it feel? From a survivability difficulty, from overcoming challenges, whether or not there are conflicts. I very early on opened it up to the world. I had a quick start document that is no longer live because it's full of stolen art. But I'll share that later. But I just put it out there. There's a lot of criticisms that come with that, of course, but it also is a great way to get people start actually being interested in it. One of the most common questions I get from aspiring developers is, how do you protect your stuff? How do you protect your ideas? And you don't. Don't even try. There's no point in trying. Nobody cares about your stuff. And not because it's not good, but because anyone that was inclined to steal from your nascent RPG is already working on their own nascent RPG, and they don't have time for your bullshit. They have their own bullshit. You have to trust to put it out there. And it's scary, of course, because especially if you've been working on it for years, you're worried that someone's going to steal your IP. There's only certain parts of a game that are copyrightable, copy protectable, and those are the setting, the capitalized nouns, what we would call the fluff, and that's what no one's going to steal. Your cool mechanics, anyone can steal at any point and reskin it into another game. So just don't worry about it. Get it out there. I kept extensive notes through changes and why I changed things. I have going back to the earliest days was a lot of notebooks, but then I switched to, well, unfortunately, this is later on. I think I've frozen. There we go. Everyone's on camera again. Will I unfreeze my camera? Actually, here, this is a good thing we'll go to while I unfreeze my camera, is my playtesting document. No, it's not what I want to do. Sorry, guys. I'm just learning this as we go.
Oh, good. That's my plan.
No, doesn't want to show that either. Okay, back to the them cam. Kept extensive notes, blah, blah, blah. I started a community, both in person, local game stores, and on Discord, notably, and got people's attention somehow. Frankly, I forget how I earned that attention. That community has become core to NewEdo, so thank you to the Discord group. Having a community around your game will make it. They will make your game better. They will be champions of your game, and you need that. There's no way to do that part of this in isolation. You can be a genius and write your game and perfect it and test it all out, but without a community, it's never going to end up on a bookstore shelf. Matthew?
Any tips on building a community?
So I tried various socials. Facebook and Instagram did nothing for me, but I think you get out of those what you put into them, and I'm not highly digital. I had never heard of Discord before starting the Discord community for it in 2020, something like that. But Discord ended up working. I think it was. I also benefit from the game having popular tropes, such that it's shiny enough to attract folks. And then I very early on set community parameters that made sure that it was always a positive, respectful, and supportive community, inclusive, and it's self-moderated for the most part, but making sure that everybody always felt welcome there and there was no negativity or toxicity has, I think, protected that community and helped it grow. The Discord's got 350 people in it now and maybe 20 or 30 active folks, and that goes up and down depending on what I'm releasing, etc. But flashy content and high engagement, especially early on when I was getting paid to sit on my lawn and do nothing and develop this game. I had all the time in the world to engage with the community. That helped build it, because having the developer sitting there listening to your feedback, being genuinely interested in reacting to your feedback, improving the game based on what you say, I think is a step towards publishing a game yourself. And I had no ego about it.
Got an echo again.
Yep, one sec. Okay, camera should be back, echo should be gone. Let's see what happens. Opening the door to community feedback and then actually acting on that feedback empowers them, gives them a sense of agency, makes them feel like they're part of the development of the game, which is huge, 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 huge. Still on this list. I gave up on ideas and I cut hard based on that feedback. Some cool mechanics just did not make the end of it. We'll get to that later. Your cool mechanics, nobody cares how much effort you put into it. They only care how fun it is at the table. So I had to chop a bunch of very cool shit that just bogged play down. And finally, I got lucky on timing, which is something we were talking about before the camera went live. Kickstarter in 2021 raised $33,000 because everyone was sitting at home, told they couldn't go anywhere, restaurants were closed, airports were shut. Everyone had a couple extra dollars to spend on games. And I paid $600 for a very pretty cover that caught a lot of attention. Okay, things I did wrong. I put no effort into social media except for Discord, which is that social media or is that just old school community? I don't know where the line is drawn there. My Facebook and Instagram suffer. The last time I updated the Instagram was during the 77 Stories Kickstarter a year and a half ago. That is a barrier to entry. It's slowing the game down because if I'd spend a couple extra hours a week, we would get more people playing the game. I didn't create shareable content early on. If you're on this YouTube channel, whether today or a year in the future, 10 years in the future, there's very little history here and almost no history of real humans playing the game, even though they were. Me and my play group are a little bit, we're Gen X and Zennials, and we didn't want to be in front of a camera. I had no interest in it. And so doing actual plays, particularly early on, was not, I didn't think this thing was going to go anywhere. So why record it? But if you want your game to go somewhere, start very early on creating content for people to go back and look into. I didn't do enough market research. I brought this thing to market in 2021, probably not having read a new RPG book since 2009. And you can tell when you look at it, it's kind of old and clunky. It's a Legend of the Five Rings, World of Darkness. It has very old, medium old school style rules, which appeal to some folks. There's a lot of games that came out between 2010 and 2020 that are rules light. I hadn't even heard that term when I hit go on Kickstarter. So market research was shit. I worked from a Word document that had crappy version control. So version control will save your ass, and not having too many versions of things will also save your ass. In this pile of books next to me, there's a hardcover, a soft cover, which is black and white, and a founder's edition, all of which had different interior layouts. Don't do that. Just fucking don't do it. Don't do that to yourself. I didn't have any layout inspiration. I was just making it up as I went along. I didn't want it to look like Legend of the Five Rings or World of Darkness, which were the games I've been playing the longest. But I hadn't gone to the market to look up something that would make my life easier, being like, ooh, I would like it to look like that. That would have been easier. I made it up from scratch. It ended up, after a lot of very hard work, working out, I think. It's a pretty book. But having inspiration would have helped, because inspiration isn't stealing. It's just a way to make your life easier. And I overpromised on my first Kickstarter. I was excited by the early success, and I kept throwing things into that Kickstarter that made my life miserable later, especially physical, tangible crap to mail out. One person got one book, one soft cover, one of these tokens, and two of those tokens. And imagine that between 600 or 1,000 people, how many different unique orders I had to fulfill in my basement. If you get to this point in the market where you're fortunate enough to be running a Kickstarter and it's going well, offer digital products. The physical products people love, and so maybe consider one of them, but don't overcomplicate your Kickstarter and don't overpromise. One of the things I promised the community, the Temple of Kozu adventure module, is still sitting on the stove cooking away. It'll get done eventually, I promise you, community, but it is miles and miles away. Okay, those are the things I did right and got wrong. Andre, you had a question?
Yeah, I was curious. Your community is easy to access locally in this game shop. How did you make it discoverable online? So how does
Reddit.
the guy from Arizona find you?
Reddit.
Yeah.
Reddit. Not being a social media guy, and particularly being here in Southern Ontario, I don't go to a lot of game conventions. I only go to one a year, and it's a little one in Guelph. And so going to those big game cons is, I think, a great way to do so. But Reddit has an incredibly positive, well, mostly positive RPG community. Hey guys. And being genuine, being on there was how I got people interested. And again, I think that a lot of it was luck from timing. And I know that's kind of a shitty answer, because how do you recreate that? But getting it out there, talking about it, sharing it, and being in multiple, whether it's subreddit or Facebook groups or online communities, talking about your game, sharing it, even if you're not getting any feedback, will slowly build that following that you'll need later on. Cool?
Yeah, can I just follow up with another one there?
Yeah, absolutely.
Is there a stage in development that's too early or too late to do that?
To what?
Establish a digital community.
No, fuck no.
Because on the one side, maybe I don't have enough to show. On the other side, I'm like a peddler.
Well, so if you get to a point where you've got a working document that can be play tested, then that thing should be online. Share the fuck out of it. Everyone should have a playtesting document at some point in your development, because if you don't have playtesters. No one needs to be working from your working file, and if your working file is good enough to be shown to people, it's not a working file. You've probably overdeveloped it without having tested it enough. Have a short form, a quick start, something like that allows you to share that document that isn't all of your lore, is minimally laid out. We'll get into this later on. As soon as that's good enough to play, it's good enough to put online, and definitely do so. No one's going to steal it.
Yeah, whatever, for sure.
Anna?
Have Have you made use of other crowdfunding sites other than Kickstarter, like Patreon? And if you did, was that beneficial to building more stuff?
No, I have not.
Oh, okay.
So again, getting back to my digital shortcomings, I use BackerKit after my Kickstarter campaigns just for logistics. Patreon I considered at the start just because it would motivate me to continue creating content, which is something that, once you get burned out in development, like, oh man, do I have to make another NPC? Oh man, I'm just not going to do it. But if you have somebody paying you 99 cents a month, you're going to get online and create that thing, right? So it's a great idea. I just don't have any input to it, unfortunately.
Well, here's a question online.
Yeah, online question.
Joel Cooper asks, do you assume that people read the book cover to cover, or assume that some start with certain sections over others? And if the latter, how did you work around it?
I assume that no one has read it cover to cover. Now, that's probably not true because there's some people here that love the game. Thank you for being here. But, yeah, the order of things in the game book is a complicated question. I see severe criticism of the order of things in NewEdo from one particularly vocal group online.
Andrew Ludin strikes again.
That's Andrew on the Discord, isn't it?
No, I don't think so. Layout, they bitch about the layout. But order of playability, but I think they're coming from a rules light system, and so the priority buy for NewEdo is complicated. And so how do you lay out priority buy? Because everyone's going to put a different priority on their priority buy.
I was just thinking, I've gone through the book, and to me it seemed pretty standard.
It's pretty standard. The thing is, like, I copied layout order from old school games. So
You can see that.
yeah.
It's a reference manual. It needs to be a certain order.
And there's things you can move around. Did I answer Joel's question? Yeah, okay. Okay, moving on. So I assume most of you are here either because you love NewEdo or because you're developing a game or some game extension product. So this section of my talk is labeled, why the fuck am I doing this to myself? And it's a very important question because it's a lot of work, but it's work that we all love. Otherwise, we wouldn't be doing it. But what do you want that end product to be is where we're going with it. Have you set yourself a goal? And what's the scope of that goal? Do you want to create a brand new game from scratch that's different than every other game out there? Do you want to create setting for an existing game? Or do you just have like some cool little idea that can be tacked on to an existing rule set? Is what you're creating so special that it needs its own rule set, or can you just use the rules from a different game? The asking yourself that question of what product you want to come out the end of this will really make it make the rest of your weeks, months, years easier. Because if you can acknowledge to yourself that you don't need to be creating up a unique rule set, you just have a fun idea that could be tacked on to an existing SRD, systems reference document, you'll save yourself years and heartache. All the creativity that you're going to put into it is now the not fluff, but like the personal stuff. Let the rules that work that somebody else has already balanced and tested and published and all of that, you can refer back to a game system that other people already know. Oh, that's the whatever, Powered by the Apocalypse system. I know that. You changed it for this. Cool. What little things did you add? I enjoy that system. I'll go play it. Understanding the scope of what you want to create will affect and make your next 2 years far much more enjoyable. If you want to create a unique game, why do you want to create a unique game? Is it because the setting in your head is so special that it needs or deserves its own game? Is it because you've created a cool mechanic that is so unique and really resolves conflict, whether all the different kinds of game conflicts, resolves conflict better than any other game out there as far as you know? Or is it that you want to create a game to match a story you're telling that has drifted away from how that system works? Getting that frame on things. I think a lot of folks writing games would be better served, and possibly me as well. Now it's too late for that. By just taking your idea and skinning it onto a systems reference document, SRD, that already exists. There's a lot of them out there. There's a ton of open source rules. And frankly, the rule set for any game is not copyrightable. So you're welcome to just go steal it. If there's a game that might work, part of this we'll get into later is research, you're going to save yourself a lot of balancing pain. Balancing the mechanics is difficult depending on your level of crunch. Just write whatever you're writing onto another game if that's easier. Not to say that you need to do that, but. And finally, with your scope and goal, do you want to turn this into a job? Is this something that you hope to be making lots of money on in the future? Matthew's laughing because it's hard to make money. This is one of the top 2% games published on DriveThruRPG, and I have $1,000 in its bank account, which is not nothing. That's fantastic. And that will pay for future art for other games, but it is certainly not my full-time job. And if it's not my full-time job as a top 2% publisher, like how many times, like, can you realistically hope to get there? So that's not meant to deter you, but that should affect your scope, how much work you put into it, how much heartache and pain, and maybe even affect, okay, well, if it isn't gonna, if I'm not gonna make $1 million, do I really need to write a brand new game? Can I just reskin something for my family and friends, my local table to play, etc.? And that's, again, not to discourage people, because the creative process, we're all here, is addictive. I don't want to disappoint by saying that, but just don't have high hopes about quitting your day job, I guess. Something very important when that comes up is, who is your audience? You're writing the game because you enjoy it, and maybe your friends and table enjoy it. But if you're going to publish it, if you want it to become a book on a bookshelf at a game store that other people are going to pick up, who are those other people? Find out what niche your game fits into. Is it a rules light? Is it a Ryutama? Is it something crunchy that solves the problems of Shadowrun, which is what I did? Is it like finding out who your audience is will help, one, getting back to finding playtesters, go into the communities of those other games and say, hey, I've got a game like blah, blah, blah. You might want to play it. And then at least you'll be able to market it better and refine what your development goals are. Okay, I want my game to be like X, obviously a little bit different, but what do I need? How different can it realistically be before I start to lose my target audience? Some people love Shadowrun, and some people love Lasers and Feelings, but not a lot of people love both. And so if you're writing a game for the Shadowrun audience, but it's rules light, you're not going to get that audience. The people that play Shadowrun, those masochistic bastards, pardon me, aren't going to pick up they'll pick it up and read it and look at the art and like your character ideas, but they're not going to play your game. Or are you even possibly writing a game for people that don't play games? The game world is developed so much that you could possibly introduce people to role-playing games. When I was playing when I was young, it was the nerdy thing that nobody would admit to doing. But now it's socially acceptable, it's popular, it's in popular media. Gaming isn't something that you have to be, scared to admit you do anymore, like in the 90s. And so if you want to draw more people in, you could even write a game for my pottery friends. This will definitely attract them, right? And you're probably right. And that's identifying your audience will help you do your marketing and development. Pardon me. Okay. So having identified your audience, any questions at the moment? Having identified your audience and why you're developing your game, whether you want to be a standalone book or a setting or some expansion on an existing game, have you done your research? This is where I failed drastically and got lucky because my book has a shiny cover. That what exists out there that is similar to your game. If you're building a generic rule system that you can play anything in, have you played other rules generic games like universal rule systems? Have they solved the problems that you're trying to solve already? And the answer will quite often be yes. It doesn't mean that you have to stop what you're doing. It means that you can, like, okay, they solved problem A. I can take that off and either steal it or refer to it or whatever. But problem B still isn't solved. But at least once you get out there and spend a lot of time reading other people's games, pay for them. Don't download them from your buddies for free. Go to Drive Through RPG. It's usually $5 to get a game. If you find it on sale, maybe it's $15. Get the PDF and do other developers the favor of reading it. It will make your game better. That heart, like, detailed game research. Pretend you're in grad school and you're doing a game development seminar, because your audience will assume that you have, and they will judge you as if this is a D- or an A+, that kind of thing. Read Substacks, read blogs, look up YouTube channels, listen to podcasts, watch actual plays about games in the genre that you're developing. Read the criticisms other people have of the kind of games that you're developing. You'll often, if you're writing a rules-light game, you'll often hear, oh, this is not satisfying because I'm looking for more crunch. You can ignore that because you understand that. You know why you're doing it. It's like, no, I want a narrative game. I'm happy using tags to solve problems rather than dice. But there's going to be a lot of criticism out there too that is valuable for your development process.
Here's a question.
Yep.
From Michael Perker, hopefully I'm not botching that name pronunciation. Which venues, forums, or communities have you found to be productive to discuss and work through development ideas? Were there any more open to a back and forth of concepts or when you needed outside input?
So the question was, because there's a lot of background here, my apologies. What communities are best for getting feedback effectively? Shorten that one up for me.
So basically, was there a good community to go to for a lot of back and forth input on your material?
Reddit's fantastic. There's a bunch of, there's art/RPG in Reddit, which is mostly about the big games. But there's 3 or 4 subreddits: TTRPG development, game design, etc., that is a couple of thousand people around the world doing the exact same thing that you're doing, and they want your feedback on their game, and so they will respect you by giving you feedback on yours. And that's what, again, you have to give. It's very much a give and take. If you want to engage with a community, it can't just be a taking of putting your shit out there and asking them to give you feedback. You have to show that you're committed to that community by giving feedback on their stuff. And that takes time. Reading documents in other people's PDFs, depending on how they've prepared them, can be a pain in the ass. But one, you're probably going to learn something, even if it's a what not to do. And two, it gives you that authenticity in those communities to show that you're a contributor. And I mean that from a small c sense, not a capital C Reddit way, but also applies that way because getting that honest feedback is only something you can get when you give. Hopefully that's a good enough answer. Okay, and then outside of other games, what media are you consuming that can also be an inspiration for your game? Unless you're writing a universal system, which needs no lore, right? Almost every game will have lore. So what movies are you watching, TV shows, books are you reading, what historical references, places and people and times and all of that. You don't have to make it all up from scratch. Doing so will be a long and painful process. So treat yourself to a bit of market research as far as just delightful input from movies, from books. If you don't have a list of movies or movies that you watch, shows that you watch, books that you've read, as you get towards your playtesting development, then you've probably just done yourself a disservice by making it all up in your head when there's a lot of amazing stuff that you can kind of crib from on the side. Okay, so that brings us back to why are you doing this? Does it need to be published or can it just stay on your kitchen table? Do you need to be 10 years down the road with $1,000 in your game bank account, even though you've had relative success and gone through a lot of heartache and turned something you love into a job? If you want to get your book onto a local shelf, there's ways that we can cheat through that by self-publishing that doesn't involve all this work to try to make it a commercial success. Make sure that as you play through, you've always keeping that in mind. What is my end goal here? Is it just to have a book on a shelf? If so, we can get that done for you in 1 year. Take any old document, clean it up, test it, put some pretty pictures in, spend $1,000, we'll get you on a bookshelf. But if you want commercial success, that's a lot more extra work. If you don't need any of that, don't go through all of this pain. You don't need to do it. Having your name on a book or in a book on a bookshelf is very gratifying. So definitely do it. Like if that's what motivates you, the work still continues to motivate you to get there for sure. And so I don't mean to discourage that. It's more just if you don't care to go through all that work to turn a hobby into a job, then you don't need to spend that extra 1,000 hours this year doing it. Okay, I'm going to move on to gritty stuff like how to do this. Any questions at the moment?
We're okay on one.
That's why we covered later, but are you going to talk about open license and SRDs in any further context or no?
Only briefly, the question was SRDs, copyrights, open licenses, community commons.
Your opinion on should people use open licenses for their own designs and stuff?
Okay, so Matthew's asked whether people should be using open licenses or offering open licenses on their content. It's my opinion of yes, because why close the door to a reader? More people will read your stuff if they can crib from it. If they can take cool little ideas.
I can absolutely support that because I only found out about NewEdo because someone told me it was open license.
Yeah, I again, with my market research fallibility, I made up a third-party license instead of using an existing one, but it effectively says, don't steal my capital N nouns, but you can use the rest of this, which is how the legals work here in Canada, at least anyways. But in the back of the book, it encourages you to just steal my stuff. Go ahead. Actually, I think I said use my capital N nouns, but you have to refer back to me if you do so. Like if you want to publish a NewEdo game on the side, all you have to do is say, Russ didn't write this. Yeah, it's in there somewhere.
I was going to say, I thought yours did say they could actually use the settings.
Yeah, it's in the back of the book. Open your game up as much as possible to everybody. If you have a very cool idea, somebody might steal it. If it's so cool that they steal it and they may refer back to you. Their game may blow up and you'll get referred back to. Worst case scenario, they steal your cool idea and their game goes nowhere. What harm have they really done you, right? People take a different view of that, of course. But I have a very liberal approach to my ideas that is fortunate, I guess. But yeah, the open license I think is only a positive, and I would love to hear an example of how it hurt somebody. Okay, drafting. How do you write? I wrote on notebooks because I was at sea for 3 years. And so I've got this cool stack of my original notebooks. They're all salt stained and old. And, if this game got 20 times more popular, we might be able to sell them one day. But like I said, I eventually started drafting in Word, and Word has shitty version control and makes it very difficult to share because a lot of people don't use Word. I was born in the 70s, so Word was just a natural thing for me. But I encourage everybody now to work in a Google document. And don't do layout. The most you should be doing in an early stage from layout is whether or not you want to publish a book, big old classic, 8.5 by 11, put it into 2-column layout, because that's how your book will eventually probably be published. And use headers, chapter headings, and subtitles and subtitles and subtitles. Google Docs and Word does a fantastic job of organizing your thoughts for you that can even be just translate directly into PDF chapters. Excuse me. If and when you get around to actually converting it to a PDF. So at the very start, work with something that you can share with others. If you're able to, depending on the state that you get it to, have a quick start that is basically just the material, like, a section on how to play, a section on how to create characters, etc. But while you're writing, basically keep it shareable at all times. No, you don't necessarily have to share it while it's just gobbledygook in Word, but you can go back and make notes. Sorry, Google Docs, not Word. Make notes for yourself, timestamp things, keep a change log for yourself. All of these will help you later on and really makes it more accessible to other folks. Because if you just say, okay, here's my Google reference, it's not shared with everybody, but I can share it with you, then I can pull it up on my phone and read it on the bus. You can make notes when you're at the airport. You can do all these things. If you work from notebooks or Word, you can't work from your phone. And you'll come up with some amazing idea while you're in transit, while you're stuck in traffic. Don't use your phone in traffic. Stuff like that having constant access to your baby is great. It really helps. It slowed me down because it took me a long time to get it on to Word or to Docs, but just write in Docs. Get excited, but don't get attached to things. Make notes on sections that you love, but there's a 90% chance that everything you love is going to get thrown out by the time it gets sent to a bookshelf. We'll get into design pillars in a little bit. Think of, is my unique idea making this game better, or is it just a unique idea? If it's just a unique idea, you're going to have to let it go eventually. Make sure you've got a way to keep track of notes that you think of in the middle of the night and or in traffic and or at the airport. Now, if you're working from a Google Doc, you just wake up and write it into the doc or into a notes file. But as you get deeper and deeper into this process, you will have these ideas. It will consume your brain. You'll get to a point where it's all you're thinking about when you wake up and go to sleep. And you'll definitely want a way to be able to create notes on the fly. If you have a notebook or a Word document, there's a point where you're not going to have access to that. Okay, so something core to game development is design pillars. Design pillars are 3 to 5 reasons you're doing this. Why are you creating your game? These are things that make your idea unique, and they can be non-mechanical. An amazing lore idea, a cool setting is a design pillar. But having 3 to 5 of these, the why you're doing this, will allow you to later cut back on your ideas. Does this match one of my design pillars? No, but it's so fucking cool. Cut it out anyways, right? NewEdo's design pillars, just to give you a sense of what they were extensive character customization that doesn't require a library of source books. I'm looking at you, Pathfinder. So the way I got around that was the priority by character creation concept. One book, and there's an infinitesimal chance of any 2 people playing the game having the same character on day 1, let alone on day 10, 20, 30, 100, whatever it may be. Just the way that the game is built, it's impossible for anybody to make the same character. Pain in the ass for the storyteller, great for characters or players. I wanted satisfying crunch. I'm an old school player. I like rolling dice. I like big handfuls of dice, as these guys do over here. And I didn't need to cut dice out of my system. Now, that cut my audience, because some people don't like that many dice, and lots of people don't like math. And so there's definitely a barrier to entry that I had to think, okay, am I going to continue? Sorry?
Getting some lag off the webcam.
Okay.
Freezing on and off.
Okay, I'll reset it in a minute. I didn't want any mini games, or as few mini games as possible. So I didn't want characters to step out of the core game loop into mini game loops whenever possible, something that had to be looked up later. Hacking in Shadowrun is a great example. If the group of characters have to stop while one character does something, that's not fun for most people. It could be very cool, and it can be very thematic, like hacking in Shadowrun, but it shuts down the table, and then it's just not fun for 4/5 of the people there, or whatever it is. People can love it. That's just one of my design pillars. I didn't want lookup tables. There's a lot of looking up in NewEdo while you make your character, but when you get to the table, it's just rolling dice based on your character sheet. The storyteller's got to remember a few things, unfortunately. But I didn't want you to have to pull up the grenade damage reference chart. When you chuck a grenade into a 10 by 10 room instead of a 20 by 20 room, how many walls is it reflecting off of? Fuck all that. Shadowrun. And then I wanted, neon without the angst. So this was more of a lore thing. I wanted my game to kind of look and feel like Cyberpunk, but not be angsty. The negativity, the dystopia, the depressing nature of most punk worlds doesn't suit my personality now. It may have 20 years ago, but it doesn't anymore. And that ended up being a major differentiator for my game. And so when I had a lore concept, I would put it into this design pillar of, is this making my game angstier? Negativity is important. We need conflict, unfortunately. Other the games, just there's nothing to do in the game. If everything is fluffy all the time, what do characters do? So there has to be conflict. But how do I create that conflict without having the world be goddamn depressing? Those are design pillars. Had you guys heard of those before? Not necessarily mine, but yeah? Okay. I don't know how common that was because I found that concept out about halfway through writing the game. And it really helped. It helped me cut a ton out, like, oh, I got to write this down. Man, this is a chore. Oh, wow, that can go, that can go, that can go. My next comment's about protection, theft, and sharing. We already went over that extensively. Share your stuff. No one's going to steal it. And if they do, it'll probably make your game better and or more popular. Okay, going on to rules. We're going to be in this section for a short period because that's not what this day is about. How much math do you want in your game? How many dice rolls? How much complex calculations? How much do you want to have to consider probability and statistics? Crunchier games use more math, more dice, more rules, and satisfy a certain audience for sure. NewEdo is leaning towards the crunchy side of things, obviously. Satisfies the audience in a certain way, but requires complex math on the background to balance it out. Balance becomes a problem the more crunchier your game gets. The trend is definitely towards having more rules-light games, wherein the narrative storytelling is more important than whether the dice tell you what happened when you try to succeed at something. But that's an audience decision. There's definitely an audience for complex and crunchy games. You just have to decide where you want to land on that. And if you like crunchy games and you want to develop a crunchy game, but you don't like statistics, you're setting yourself on an uphill battle. Probabilities are complex and complicated. Exploding dice add into that. I was mathy. I'm not mathy anymore. So some of the fundamentals of it, I was able to dredge back up from college and by research. But the more dice you have, the more balance you're going to require, and the far higher chance you're going to have that you're not going to balance it properly. Balance isn't necessarily important if you can just go out and say your game is asymmetrical, i.e. not every character will be the same power as every other character, which is definitely true for NewEdo. There's some more powerful and less powerful characters, but I had to throw that balance out the window for the benefit of complexity. It's like, okay, just can't balance some things. On a similar subject is survivability. You can have a low crunch game that is still hard, i.e. the characters may die today. DCC. Easy to set up a game and run. Very few dice rolls, very simple math. But fuck, your character's going to die at the end of the day probably. Or in the middle of the day. People love that. People love the Souls games, right? And so that's something that you should think about while you're in the rules and mechanics creation system or a part of your design process. Because if you want it to be crunchy, you need to make sure that your crunchiness is either survivable or not, depending on what your target audience is looking for. And that's an easy math. No, that's a math problem, a solvable math problem. I highly recommend that if any developer isn't already doing so, to use a tool called AnyDice. If you want to drop that into the chat there. I'm sure that there's alternatives to AnyDice out there, but I used AnyDice. It takes a little bit of learning, but it can show very complex outputs from dice rolls and what your probabilities of success are. I did a bit of research on averages, what not numerical averages, but what people want when they're playing a game. So I wanted my game to land in kind of a middle ground of survivability. So how difficult did I want to be to succeed at challenges on day one, to succeed at challenges after you gain a few levels, and then to succeed on challenges at the end game, late game. Any dice or a tool like any dice makes that possible, because otherwise you're making it up. And I promise you're going to miss something. Your game meta. Is it a theater of the mind game, i.e. a game where you're just talking it out like we're all doing right now? Is it a grid-based game where everyone has to use the grid? Otherwise, it just doesn't work because it's got tactical, crunchy play. Or is it a combination? Is it a game meant to be played on VTT? If it's a game meant to be played on VTT, do you have the skills to create a VTT or know somebody that does? Very important. People enjoy tactical games, and let me prove that to you. People love tactical games. Yeah, yeah. Sorry, Warhammer guys, or Bolt Action guys. But tactics require crunch, and if that's not what you're going for, make sure that you don't try to layer in too many cute little combat mechanics, because you're going to add crunch without batting back to your design goal. And another thing under meta, which is relatively new, is your game designed to be run by a storyteller or a dungeon master? Can it be run by a group of people playing together without a dungeon master or a storyteller? Can it be run on your own? Can you sit at home and play your role-playing game by yourself using some randomization? Those have become more popular in the last 5 or 10 years, probably because of COVID. And that's a very cool way. It's a complex way to develop a game because you have to basically add tables in for randomized outcomes. But it's a unfulfilled demand I still find. People regularly ask me, is there a way to play NewEdo without a storyteller? And unfortunately, the answer is no, at least as far as I'm aware. Your challenge and resolution systems. Here we get into like the core of any role-playing game is how do you overcome conflicts? And those conflicts can be traditional things like fights, or social conflict, or exploration, or survival. The core of your mechanic will revolve around conflict management or conflict resolution. You should, whatever you settle on, whether it's rolling 1d6 or rolling 50 d20s and dividing by 12 and taking the sine wave of it, use as few conflict resolution mechanics as possible. Players have a limited appetite for changing gears. Having a fight resolved in a very different way than a social conflict may seem natural because punching is straightforward and intimidation is tricky. But even in a crunchy game, minimize the additional ways to resolve conflicts. And if you can refer back and continually use the same way or similar ways, that creates a game loop that is recognizable and doesn't slow your game down. All games have game loops, i.e. Conflict arises, there's some method attempted to resolve it, and then you're either rewarded or punished based on how you've succeeded at that conflict, whether it's micro or macro. Understanding your game loop and how that loop and mechanic can be fed into different resolutions, survival and punching at the same time, will really help streamline your game and help you balance later on. And when you come up with a new and cool mechanic, measure it against your design pillars. Was this a good thing to add, or was it just cool? There's a lot of very cool thematic things that you can add into your game, but does it foster what you were aiming for with the game development itself? For example, NewEdo's character development complexity, I wanted characters to feel like 1,000 little ways that they could get better every day, based on the video game Borderlands. Borderlands, you're not going 3 seconds without some ping of dopamine. A new gun, new heal, new shield, new this, new that, bing, 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 experience, hero points, blah, 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 blah. You're just awash. That's difficult to manage in the role-playing game, and I'm sorry, NewEdo storytellers. But players enjoy being pinged with dopamine. So I created an experience system for the weapons. There's no magic weapons in NewEdo, so how do you make players have fun with coming from 5e? Where's my magic sword? We don't really have that here. Well, fuck, I want a magic sword. Okay. So I developed a mini game effectively, or sorry, it's got the same loop as character development. Weapons get experience, and they get stronger when you use them, just like your characters. It's a very simplified version, but it's something that is not outside of the character development. Weapons get experience, players get experience. Weapons use experience to gain attack and damage, limited, it's not highly complex. Players use experience to get better in every way, shape, and form. I put that on the table, I chewed it out, I balanced it, thought, is this really necessary to put in? And then ended up surviving, and I don't hear about it a lot, which usually means it thinks it's a good thing, or people have forgotten about it, which is also possible in the 400-page rulebook. Okay, it's 2 o'clock. No, let's go through this one next section first. Everyone okay for 10 more minutes? Okay, that was mechanics 1. You notice I'm not really going into how your game works, how to develop rules, how to, like, that's years of internet research by smarter people than I. Happy to discuss it, but not something that we've got the scope for in 3 hours today. This is similar to that, just something to consider about as you go into the mechanics part of your characters. Characters are why people play the game. We're all pretending to be somebody else or something else. So there's class-based games, experience point-based games, skill-based games, blah, 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 tags, variables. As you develop your character system, it has to integrate with your conflict resolution system. And it should have a similar complexity. You don't want a very simple character creation system and a complex conflict resolution system. If it's just easy to create a character and then throw them into a very complex game, the characters are not being, you're not going to get any gratification out of them. And if creating a character is highly complex and the game is too simple, there's no way to use the special little corners of the characters that you've just built. So whether you're going for rules light, rules heavy, complexity, whatever it may be, try to make sure that there's some sort of parity between the complexities here. And then balance and symmetry. Are all your characters going to be the same power? D&D, all the characters are the same power. You're all solving the same problems all the time. How can I kill this thing in front of me? It doesn't matter what color your sword is, whether you're slinging a spell or wielding a sword or whatever it may be. They all are within a decimal point the same power on day one. They're just skinned differently to resolve problems in effectively the same way. So that's high balance in your character creation. The opposite of that is asymmetry, wherein you give players more options to create their characters, and you're going to open the door to them doing shit that you didn't expect, so characters will not be balanced. Asymmetry is very gratifying when you create the perfect character for you, and very frustrating when you create the perfect character for you, and that character's strengths don't get to get used in your story. So asymmetry increases customization, which is what NewEdo was built on, but makes storyteller lives more complicated and can result in player frustration if your character's not getting to do the thing they were built to do and they suck at everything else. In D&D, you're going to roll a 20 and probably succeed. Whether or not you're really, if you have a -1 to your roll, you can still succeed. In NewEdo, if you suck at socials, you're going to just fail. Like, you're going to have a teammate to go in and charm somebody for you because you can't do it. And if you built your character that way, eventually you get accustomed to that. Like, okay, I'm just not good here. And everyone can still roll, but anyways, that's an aside. That balance versus asymmetry is an important thing for player satisfaction, effectively. Resource management. Health, wealth, mana, ammo, network or faction points, stamina, morale, humanity, sanity, encumbrance. There's 10 resources that everyone at this table has played with some of those in a game. There's probably 20 more resources I haven't listed. How much do you want your game to be a bookkeeping game? I love spreadsheets, and I love to make a spreadsheet for my characters and stuff like that. And so resource management is perfectly okay for me. But the level of resource management, that is how many things do players have to track, should match your game complexity as well. Usually maxing out at 3 kind of thing, unless you've got a highly complex game. Encumbrance and inventory management, nobody's interested. Now, there are some people that fucking love that. early on in the development, somebody shared a game with me that was 500 pages long that they've been developing, and that they had this huge community for it, and it was just about resource management. It was a Dark Sun style, like cool old desert warriors, but like the weights were listed in decimal points, and like, but I went to the community and it was just loved. But he knew his target audience, right? And there was, I think, 7 character resources that had to be managed on top of the inventory management. And so you could be good at this, blah blah blah. Consider that bookkeeping is not popular for the most part, particularly when it slows down play. Bookkeeping after a session is over can be fun. Like the end of the day when you're playing Skyrim and you have to take apart your backpack and put everything into the right place, or when you're playing Minecraft and you're done mining for the day and you got to put things back where they need to be. That end of day bookkeeping is perfectly acceptable for a lot of players. But in-game management, don't make players track their ammo. Or if you do, make sure you're playing a game or designing a game where you've got the kind of players who really want to keep track of how many bullets not that they've shot and how many they're carrying. Your character progression system will end up being what keeps people playing the game. How do folks feel like they've made progress with their character? Is it experience-based? Is it fail forward, wherein you fail a roll and your character automatically gets a little bit better at that skill because you've learned by falling on your face? Or is it success-based learning, the exact opposite, where characters automatically get better at things they've succeeded at doing? Think of some way to reward your players as they play the game. Because unless you only intend them to play it for a month or one session, they're going to want their characters to get better in some way, shape, or form. That may seem rhetorical, but like there's a million ways to do so. Again, tie the complexity of your rewards back into the complexity of your game, and the diversity of your rewards back into the complexity of your game. We have to talk about balance again. The reward system is hard to balance, particularly with asymmetrical characters. Take a step back when you're in the development process put yourself into the shoes of a character who's been playing for a year. How strong are they? Give them 100 experience or 10 levels or whatever it is you use, and then throw them at the challenges you thought they would be challenged by at level 10. Does the math still work? And quite often it will not, because your play testers probably haven't gotten past level 2. And there's a kind of thing where teasing out the long ends of your probabilities, NewEdo fails at a little bit. Once you start to get about midway towards the end game, the dice rolls are so high it's almost impossible to fail sometimes, or it's so high that characters can die in one shot, even at mid game, and I didn't intend that. And here's me having spent a lot of time on my probabilities. The Discord will laugh at some of the 80s and 90s that have been rolled in a system where I thought 45 would be hard. But that's, I tried to extrapolate because my playtesters got to rank 3 for the most part. And the rest of it was math. And there's only 5 ranks. And so that's definitely a learn from my mistakes kind of thing. Make sure you take a long view of your campaigns. How will your characters or your players want to be after 2 years or 5 years? Do you still want them playing the same characters? If not, who cares, right? If they're not intended to be playing the same characters for 5 years. But well, maybe not a lot. You guys can contradict me here. I build a character. I love them. I want to play them for 5 years. I want to see what the very end of their ability scale is. And I want to be challenged still at the end of that. How do you keep challenging somebody who you've been giving things to for years? Your playtesters are unlikely to get to your end game unless you've been playing your game for that long. You don't have to have a cohort of 20 playtesters play your game to its end, but you do have to make sure that the math continues to extrapolate properly. Rewards, similar to progression. Are you giving out experience? Are you giving out money? Are you giving out wealth, background, status? How can you reward your characters mechanically beyond just the narrative things that you say, oh, congratulations, you're the mayor of NewEdo now, that kind of stuff. How often do you want your players to get that hit of dopamine? I was frustrated with 5e and Dungeons and Dragons for years because it would be sessions and sessions and sessions before anything good happened. I got a new level. And sure, you get a new weapon or something cool here and there. But the dopamine hits were very tiered in that, and that's a class-based game. That's how those work. I identified NewEdo by what it was not, was a class-based game, and so I found 1,000 little ways to reward characters every day. Like I said, it makes a hassle for storytellers. Sorry, guys, but it checks that Borderlands box of always throwing things at you. How are you going to reward your characters, players? And then fatality. Are characters intended to die? And if they are intended to die, is there any way to continue on to reward players for continuing to come back to your game? Are they going to be frustrated by your characters dying? That's an audience question. You don't give a bunch of Ryutama players a DCC character, right? Because they want to enjoy their story for years to come. Your character died. That's traumatic. You have to consider whether or not the fatality of your game suits the audience that you're writing it for. And even if it does, like roguelike games, is there a way to reward them for a character having gotten X, Y, Z through your game and then being killed? Like, give them some way to reward the investment in their previous character without just giving them the same level of experience and saying, okay, start from scratch. Okay, now I definitely need a break from talking. Let's take a couple of moments here. Folks online, my apologies. I didn't tee up a movie or anything like that. I'm going to turn the mic on in the middle and we can listen to the guys play Bolt Action and Warhammer. Good, it's okay, yeah.
Everyone's friendly.
Just this all looks very different.
Yeah, just further up.
That's fair, that's fair. I've got pencils for it too.
Probably like 10 minutes.
Well, there isn't this one.
That's really scary. But I like to see how like aspects of it,
Yes. Yeah, like set up 3 numbers for each book and then just stick to it. And if it doesn't fit, put it in a different book.
yeah. I have to go back and see.
Yeah.
Is there hardware numbers and how well would I stick to that?
Well, and you're so prolific too, even if in the past it's like, my pillars are, they're at work pillars. But in the future, maybe think of some and you can streamline the book. Yeah.
I have to do it start thinking of
Cool. Okay.
because I left my dogs with area.
Okay. Well, thanks for coming home. I love you.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
Like I said, I like the answer. You know, that just makes it human. Okay.
Okay, drive safe.
Yeah. See you soon.
Okay, I do know. How much time do we have, Bryce?
10 minutes. Sorry? Yeah, make a quick run. Yeah. Where'd you guys coming from?
I'm from St. Catherine's. My DM came in from
From
around Windsor.
holy shit, job. School, awesome. School.
I'm Laurel. They're designing developing
Cool. Yeah, exactly. So yeah, everything does the same thing. So just expanding on it. I mean, I'm ready.
Sorry, I've just seen the blades.
It's all good.
Yeah. And I speak very well.
discouraging you from doing things here.
But if I think in building a tabletop, I would like to be more intentional. Yes, but it's theater, it's not.
Oh, the concessions here are so cheap. I love it.
Oh yeah, it's like a buck each or something.
This was $3.50 total.
Nice.
I'm so used to Black Knight where it's like, yeah, this costs one kidney.
I was just wondering if you had a link to the whatever you're using this week. Just I could so I can listen up front.
Sure, yeah, absolutely. Where will I send it to you?
The closest board game store for me is a store called Black Knight in Hamilton.
Yeah.
And man, is that one like to charge. Which is why I don't have to go there.
Just search Ryan.
I'm from Welland, but I often
Or actually, I'm weird.
That one's pretty good.
Yeah, David's awesome.
Sent.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
I have no idea what I'm eating.
By the way, is there anything you need up here? Or?
Yes.
You did win it, take the one spot. Your German is English. Hey,
Ready? Thanks for coming out.
OBS, I've used before.
I learned this last year.
Yeah.
But it's like, it is intuitive enough.
Did you need YouTube Studio? Is it a download program or is it from YouTube?
No, it's live on YouTube. This was a download. So this is OBS in the background, so I run all my screens and what mic I'm using and all of that here. And then you could just queue up, like, put that one back on, turn it off, turn them all off. I can refer to other documents, although I think that one's not working properly at the moment. And you can change the scene too. So if we wanted to have one camera always running with a certain mic on, you could just switch scenes rather than having to manage them this way. And
could you run it through like split screen?
I haven't been recording. Anyway, so
oh no. Yeah.
YouTube will hopefully.
I will admit,
Well, all this happens for
live stream. I suppose.
Yeah, I'm gonna hit it now. I'll start up again, but.
Well, I mean, at the very least, once you start recording the back half of the Q&A, then you can always like redo your shtick.
And frankly, I mean, the next part is more what we came here for. Anyways. It's like
Right.
So it's not a waste.
Yeah.
We'll just miss all the fun engagement.
Good call.
You staying around?
Yeah.
Oh no!
Was OBS free?
Yeah. Yeah, it took me 3 hours to go from what the fuck I'm not doing.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, that's fine.
Yeah, exactly. No, thankfully, Beth has all the digital toys, rights, and cameras and all that.
Right.
To plug it in. But she came in like frames and
Oh, great.
yeah. I mean, like I probably could have muddled through, but she gave me some good advice. I think it's nice to have a couple of different perspectives here.
Yeah, switch them around.
Yeah. Particularly because later on, one of the guys are like, oh no! I should ask you. Yeah, I'm so sorry. I'm gonna get this thing going again. How do I do that? Yeah. All right, guys, let's do this more. If you still want. Shut up! Yeah, cool. Fuck you, Bruce. I think I turned off my lapel mic while I was peeing, so that's a good thing, right? Sorry if I did.
That's off.
That's how you build a community.
That's a very niche community.
I've been listening in literally the whole time. You're good.
Whatever pays the bills, right?
That's what you're going to get to your Patreon.
Yes, that's a wholly different thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Holy Ross.
It's like the top donors get mic bathroom access.
Exactly. Password access only.
Yeah.
Lapel mic. Okay. Is this capturing again? We'll take a moment. I realize I wasn't recording for that last hour and change, so there goes 6 months of work. But here we are.
Oh no, sorry about that.
Yeah. I think YouTube might automatically archive it.
Are you broadcasting to YouTube?
Yes.
Then it should.
Yeah, there should be like a bot or something.
Yeah. We'll find out. I mean, what we're getting into now is why people signed up. The rest of that was just, me talking at you guys and captive audience, right?
It should record just like all technology should just work.
Yeah, it should just work, right? Okay. Let's go. Okay, tell them that we're starting up again. But if they're not in front of their computer, they don't care anyways, right? Fingerprint. Okay, welcome back. Before we get into section 2 of how to turn your game into a book, which is why you're all here. Wait, I gotta start recording. Okay, welcome back again. Nice. Before we get into the section why you all showed up on how to turn your game into a book on a game store bookshelf, I want to take a brief interlude to discuss character sheets. Because everybody loves character sheets, and it's a question that is constantly asked of me. How, where, what, what complexity? And the answer is don't bother. Don't make your character sheet before final layout. Like, have something that works. Have something that is usable, something that is not ugly, which I know is a little bit of layout, but use Google Slides or Google Sheets if you're good with Excel or spreadsheets. The character sheet is going to change with your rules. It's going to change as you develop. And you got to pack a lot, well, depending on your game, you have to pack a lot of information into your character sheet. And as the game develops, those rules are going to change, your layout's going to change, and all those dozens and dozens of hours that you've used to make your sheet fit perfectly with the right information in the right place will be thrown out the window in 2 months, I promise you. So make it usable, but don't try to make it pretty. Use Google Slides. You can drag and drop blocks. You can make it colorful. You can put your headers on there. If you've got a more complex game, do your players the favor of making a Google Sheet that will do some of the work for them. NewEdo ran with a Microsoft Excel character sheet until publication. And it wasn't pretty. Can I find an example? But it worked and had all the data, and I can move it around. When a rule changed or something became more or less important, I was able to take those cells and put them onto page 2 of the sheet while still having all the references work. If and when you get to the point where you want to make your sheet pretty, there's a lot of free software out there to do so. If you haven't used it before, Inkscape is a free vector formatting thing that I've used since day one on NewEdo that I knew nothing about on day one and did the layout of this book in for the most part. So it's not InDesign, what is it? Well, it's a clone of a paid service that you can get for free. Again, that's Inkscape, Inkscape. Great tool. I'm not going to show off my character sheet because I'm never going to pull it up here without screwing up the rest of this technology. Apps and online tools. We're going to take a moment here to talk about VTTs. Are you ready for this? Okay. So NewEdo has significant complexity, and one of the biggest criticisms is, particularly for folks that don't like doing a lot of mathing and or who are not coming from a priority build character creation system, is how the fuck do we do this? And the character creation complexity is gratifying, but it's an uphill battle the first couple of times you do so. So I made a shitty online Excel spreadsheet kind of thing that people use for a long time. A community member built a much better Google Sheet to make characters. It wasn't pretty, but it very much worked. Drag and drop things in, did all the math for you. If that's worth investing in for sure, if you have any spreadsheet competence, do so. Make it easier for people to play your game, particularly as you're in the development stage, because you can get playtesters a lot easier. But then with the rise of VTTs, everyone wants to play. Lots of people are playing online. And when you play online, theater of the mind doesn't have to be quite as boring because there's a lot of digital assets. A incredible member of our community, Kieran, has developed. I'm going to switch cameras so we're showing Karen here. Developed a unique Foundry module for NewEdo and has a game design background. And he's going to spend a couple of minutes here sharing the utility of VTTs and whatever the hell else he wants to talk about on game design. You might want to drag that closer to you, though.
Getting an echo.
Okay, hold on one sec.
I can't reach that. That's so far. Yeah, that looks like that's as far as it's gonna get.
Project, like in the opera.
Yeah, there you go. From the stomach.
Yes, from the stomach. So, as Russ Salty mentioned, I do have a game design background. I went to school to actually study game design. So I'm here not with my own system, but as someone who has a lot of insights into how systems are made. I went to an art school, unfortunately, but I am a programmer by trade. So for the most part, I've been programming NewEdo from the ground up as its own custom system that goes and handles all of the different things it can potentially do. And the biggest thing I've run into is that despite NewEdo being a very complex system, is that there is a lot of things I need to go through and handle that someone might want to go and deal with. For example, like they mentioned, some weapons aren't going to be magic. But what if the player wants to add a magic weapon? I need to go and account for that. So making it, by default, I couldn't find any rulings in NewEdo where your weapon would ever deal more than one type of damage at once. That should be nice and simple. But as soon as you have a character who wants to deal any additional damage types, you need to account for that. And then if they want to do that, I need to go and add access for it for a weapon to now deal that additional damage type on its own without needing a character feature. For example, the Bozu has their fate line that adds elemental damage to an attack. So now you're dealing at least 2 types. No reason not to go all the way with it. So it gets very out of hand very quickly trying to go and make even the smallest, simplest features. Because now we're handling multiple different equations all at once to go and make one single roll for your character. And that's not even including any of the actual design that has to go into it. Like this little book I have here has like the first drafts I've made for the sheets for the NewEdo characters, as well as many, many more. I think I have at least 4 different versions of it in this book alone. That's only for NewEdo, not even including any other systems I have worked on. But when it comes to actually playing the game, from when I had first played NewEdo, where we were making all of the rolls manually, if your system uses a lot of dice, this makes the game extremely accessible. Instead of going and being like, okay, gather your 12 different dice that you need, because we're going and getting potentially all the trait dice, any penalties and modifiers that might be on it, then adding your skills and accounting for all that, you click the button and it rolls. The session goes quickly and effectively. So being able to go and use this as a way to showcase your game as well means that you can get straight to the point of what's happening and visualize it for your players without having to go and show your audience the slow and painstaking process of gathering and choosing the dice. And for a first-time player, this might make it really easy to go and get into a more complex system as well. Because Rules Light is really pushing for a system that is easy to pick up and learn and just go and play. Having a VTT means that you can go and get that ease of use without having to sacrifice the crunch you might want to have in your game. I have a lot of other things I could go and talk about from many different systems and whatnot, but we can get to that later, as I'm sure there's a lot of other publishing things people want to hear as well, and how to market their games and whatnot.
So, can I ask a question? Please.
Yeah, go ahead.
So it sounds like you're advocating for somebody to consider VTTs early on in their design scope, and in doing so, save themselves from sacrificing complexity, because the VTT will give you that ease of use.
Yeah.
So it feels like it's Rules Light, but it isn't. So if you're going into that design scope right out of the gate, you should be able to make a Rules Light game that's actually quite chunky in the back end, because you're making a VTT.
Yes, you can. Because in the end, you don't have to go and do all of this math. As long as someone has gone and set up the sheet properly, you don't have to worry about any of that, and it makes it very accessible for newer players. Because Because a big thing I've personally seen with a lot of the games I've played recently is they try to be D&D because D&D is what everyone knows, and they kind of fall behind because of it. Just to put it out there, like there was a game I played recently called Tales from Myriad. Very beautiful book, super interesting mechanics for magic. It's very fun and kind of rules light system. But personally, it fell apart for me because it tried to be D&D, but it didn't quite copy all the stuff you need to be D&D. And without those core features, a lot of things just sort of stopped falling in place. It's a very number small system, but uses exploding dice. But instead of rolling advantage, so roll an extra dice, keep the highest, as a 2d6 system, they raise the chance of dice exploding. So either you fail the attack, or you kill the person with so much damage they are instantly dead. No questions asked. Very feast or famine.
Yeah. Well, I mean, so if someone's interested in something like that, you've kind of entered because you like NewEdo.
Yes.
But what is like your background, or rather, when I go to Google on Fiverr to find you to do something for me, who am I looking for?
In particular, using Foundry, you could probably go and find someone on the Foundry Discord server who's willing to do this, especially if you're offering payment. Personally, I've just been working on projects for games that I like and enjoy the most. Pathfinder, for example, is one of the biggest and best supported systems on there that isn't officially managed by Foundry itself. The only one they actually do is D&D, but Pathfinder has the most support and is completely managed for free by its community because the system is simply that popular. So if you make a popular system, support for it will simply follow with it. Same as what's happened for NewEdo here.
Gotcha.
Now, I don't use Custom System Builder for Foundry, which you can build sheets and all that stuff. We're doing the basics of actually building a module.
So mine is not actually a module. It is a full system, and it's a little bit easier than a module itself because there's a lot of rules modules have to follow that a system does not. The developers for Foundry, in particular, they go by Atropos on the Discord server for Foundry, has released and made a Wikipedia sort of type article dedicated to making your own system. So it requires basic programming knowledge and using, in particular, JavaScript, as it's made with that entirely. And then with basic web development skills, you can whip up a quick system on its own without any automation, admittedly, in a couple days.
Does that work with version 12? When we had one with version 10, it didn't work.
Which one?
I don't know, when I found out their website. Foundry's website.
Oh, you mean the system template?
Yes.
Let's drink beer afterwards and talk about the gritty details. Just, I want to hear the answer. Yeah.
I would recommend starting with it, but if you don't have a programming background, it might be worth just getting a little bit of experience in what you would use the tools for it. So most of the issues that came from that are just issues that came with the update that are quickly enough diagnosed if you know how to use the developer tools inside your web browser.
You good, man? Just throw it. I turned it off. You can throw it to me.
Thanks.
Before to cut you guys a little bit short there. Yeah. Okay. Thanks, Kieran. Appreciate it, man. Okay, so turning your book into a product. That's why you're paying me the big bucks, right? Your game isn't a viable product until genuine strangers have played it. And like it has to be people that don't know you, or people that genuinely don't like you. That's okay too. The community of people that are going to play test games in development are all, for the most part, aspiring game developers themselves, and they will have come across road bumps and hurdles and have a critical eye for things that play testers at your table who you've evolved from one game to the next may not have an eye for. Either they won't have an eye for, or they'll be very forgiving because they genuinely like you, or they haven't played the kind of game that you're trying to develop. So getting it out there and having people pick it up and play it with you not in the room, you not watching, you're not at the table, is step one. And until you've done that, it's not a publishable game. So that I know goes back to a lot of how do you get there? How do you do that? What does the form look like when you're handing it out? How do you get that community? And that's kind of what we talked about for the last hour. Sorry for failing to record that, by the way. And we can talk about that. Join the Discord. I'll help as best I can. The whole community will help as best we can with suggestions on how to do so. But starting with Reddit, Googling or Redditing, how do I find playtesters is a good start. Again, you got to bribe them by reading their stuff, but then you'll get there. Finding playtesters is hard. Community is key. NewEdo was built on its community. Like nobody would give a shit about this game if the 300 or 400 people that are that are on Discord didn't continue to give me feedback, for me to be open to their feedback, for me to make changes and notes based on their feedback. I know it sounds trite to say it because it is a lot easier said than done, but getting that community will make your game robust and eventually make it publishable. A very pretty game shouldn't be published you can publish it just because you spent the money on it or whatever, but you really need to get a lot of critical input from strangers before you start to think about putting it on a shelf. So make it as easy as possible for people to play your game. Have a quick start, have pre-generated characters, have a front page that provides a brief summary of everything. Why your game was written, who its intended target audience is, what games are similar to it, what media if you like X, you will like this. Have a one-pager at the very front of your game and the pretty picture that you got from somewhere. So when people open it up, they can say, oh, this is supposed to be like Shadowrun, but it doesn't have the negativity. I actually kind of like that idea. Okay, well, it still rolls lots of dice. I like that too. Oh, but he promises no mini games? I fucking hated that about Shadowrun. Go through 5 or 6 bullets in the front page that just really will convince people whether or not reading the next 30 or 50 or 100 pages of your playtest document is worth their time. Playtest documents need to have enough meat to explain your system. Will be more for a more crunchy game and less for a rules light game. But those documents don't have to be pretty. They just have to be readable, legible. You have to accept criticism. It can be hard depending on how your view of your game is. You've been creating your baby for 1 month, 1 year, 1 decade. And when someone criticizes it, whether politely or not, and I guarantee you're going to get impolite criticisms, you have to take those criticisms with the intent of making your game better. It's not a personal attack, especially on the internet, because fuck those guys. But their criticisms will make your game better. Like hearing those things that, oh, it's too complex, the layout is wrong, the blah, 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 the blah, 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 take those feedback. You don't have to make changes based on their feedback. You can say, I don't care that it's too complex. I designed it for complexity. You're just not my target audience. Say that politely to them or don't say it at all. That kind of thing. Maintain courtesy at all times on the internet, please. But if you're not willing, if your ego can't take it, then you can't publish the book. Don't bother. Play it with your friends. Take notes constantly. Make changes. Cut and revise, cut and revise, cut and revise. Watch people play your game if you're able to, if you're very fortunate enough to be able to sit into a room where people are playing your game and you are not playing. Take notes, chop sections out, and or change the order of things. Someone's going to ask a question about your document that you know the answer's on page 62, but they ask it in the first 3 minutes of them sitting down to the table. Maybe that question should be answered in the first 10 pages. And that's the kind of thing that we all get so far up our own asses when we're writing these things that you think the answer is obvious. Here's an anecdote. My wife and I run a sailboat charter. And we're the only sailboat charter in Niagara. And we have this branding that's got a sailboat on it, and it's called Niagara Nautico. And, you know, there's a lot of shit that makes it look and sound like a sailboat charter. But I'm a sailor, and we went to a wedding show, and at the end of that wedding show, the vendor across the hall from us came and said, wow, that's a beautiful presentation. What do you guys do? And we were floored. We were too far up our own asses because we just spent 2 years building a business model, marketing, branding. My wife is great with branding, photography, that nowhere did it say sailing charters. And so game development's the same way, that we've been working on this problem, this conflict resolution system, this character development system, this reward system for so long that you forget that the answer is no longer obvious in your document. It's no longer obvious in the first 3 pages if it's an important thing. And then remember to go back to your design pillars. As you get feedback, does the feedback suggest that something falls outside your design pillar, or that they just don't like it, but it does fall in your design pillar? If people are not going to like aspects of your game, you can't please everybody. Don't bother trying, right? If critical feedback has identified something that is intended to be part of your game, you don't have to cut it. Like, again, you're not going to please everybody, but just make sure that you are being honest with yourself and with those design pillars. They can shift over time, but they shouldn't change dramatically, or you've got a whole new game. You can add one in, like, I really want to make sure that I've got blah, blah, blah. Okay, put in that design pillar. Don't get 7. Keep it below 5, that kind of thing. So the copy, when you get here to playtesting, your document should have headers. Like, it should be shareable online digitally. They shouldn't need a printout. My poor playtesters all had a printout because I was playtesting in goddamn Word. I spent way too much time making it look pretty. And then it all got thrown out, of course, anyways. Just have a functional document that can be shared digitally and read on phones or tablets or computers. Use headers. Make sure that it's searchable by header chapter, and searchable by page number if possible. Include as many examples as you can. When you get to the conflict resolution section, make 5 examples and just lay them out on their whole page. If you want to do this, here's how you do it. The next one will be exactly the same mechanic, but with a different character name, or an intimidation roll versus a punch roll, or something like that. Those little example vignettes take it out of the meta and onto the tabletop. Drop in NewEdo's 308 pages long. There's probably 100 pages of examples in there. It makes printing the book far more expensive, but it makes playing a complicated game a lot easier. And I don't even think I have enough. Don't worry about editing. Don't worry about editing. It's going to be gross and bad. Whether or not you're a good writer, don't worry. Like, if your playtesters say, I don't like the way that you've written this, then they probably don't want to play your game. If they want to play your game, they're going to forgive your misuse of commas and or your bad spelling. Like, that doesn't matter at this point. And at some point, you're going to have to get a professional editor. So don't bother trying to make it perfect, because your professional editor is going to charge you the same, regardless of whether you're a 90% English student or a 40% English student. They're going to charge you $2 to $3 a page. They don't give a fuck how good you are. So get it all out there, make it readable, but don't worry about making it perfect. And the same goes for layout. You're probably going to pay someone to do layout later on, depending on how far down this road you get. Make it functional. Put blocks in where you might want to use placeholder art, but you don't need to make it pretty. Chapter headings don't have to use special fonts. Colors maybe to identify them, but don't worry about the fine details, which will come much later when you're actually getting closer to publication. So for layout, pick something to be inspired by. As you play the game, as people play your game, and you get towards publication, whether or not you're going to do the layout yourself, find a game or a book or a textbook or an encyclopedia that has the layout, a style of layout that you like. 2-column, 3-column, landscape, portrait, oversized digest. Like, as you start to get past playtesting and into working documents that might be published, that pagination is going to become very important. And pagination will be your nightmare later on if you go from an 8.5 by 11 to an 8.5 by 5.5. All these things have cost implications later on, but a 300-page book at 8.5 is just a 600-page book at digest, and you're not saving any money really anyways. It's just whether you want to have a traditional size book or a zine size book or what have you. Grids, actually, can you drop this link into the chat, please? The one that's Clayton Noteston's blog under layout version 1 on page 8. Grids are hyper important. I didn't know what the hell they were. I was making it up as I went along. It's where things fall on the page to make them readable. You need blank space, you need art. It can't just be pages and pages of text because that will bore people. People don't like to read size 10 font all the way across an 8.5 by 11 page. It's easy to lose your space. Grids and layout design will make your book immediately go from looking like an amateur thing to a, wow, this is starting to get there. Whether or not you're the person that ends up doing your layout or you pay someone else to do so, how you start to structure your document, including dropping in placeholder art and stuff like that, should be based on the grids because your layout artist is going to use grids, so you might as well understand them now. If you are techie, if you want to do your own layout, NewEdo was done in Word, and it was hard, and I don't recommend it. But it's possible for folks that haven't seen NewEdo. Let me see if this is going to work. It's a relatively pretty book, all done in Word. So you can do so, but I'm only saying this because if you've already got a book 70% written in Word, you can finish it, especially if you're doing a pretty good job so far, because layout costs $6 to $10 per page to have a professional do it. But otherwise, Affinity Publisher and InDesign are the two tools you'll be using for layout if you are not willing to spend $10 to pay someone else to do it, $10 per page. Affinity, Publisher, and InDesign are not word processing. So you still are going to do your writing somewhere else, whether it's Word or Google Docs, and then you're going to bring in sections into Affinity, into Publisher, based on style sheets and references and shit I don't stand because I paid someone else to do it, or I did it in Word in a very clunky way myself. So you will continue writing in your original document, whether that's Google Docs or Word or another word processing thing, and only masochists will try to do layout in their word processor. NewEdo was, I think, 500 megabytes by the time I was published, and it was unmanageable. I have an old laptop, so some people may have better ones, but like it would take me 6 minutes to load. It would crash all the time because you have to load all your high resolution images into the document. So just don't try. Just don't try. If you want to talk about tricks of using Word to do layout, I'd happy to do so. Join the Discord, and we can start a whole little subsection on that. But this is something for you to be worrying about much later down the road. The order of things. Here's a much debated subject. When you first pick up a game book, do you go to the character creation section? Do you read it from page 1? Do you go to the setting to see if you like it? Now, obviously, this depends on whether it's an expansion on an existing game or anything like that. There's no right answer. There's preferred answers where you got to give people an example of what they're going to be playing. Give them a reason to be playing it. I dove into the setting before I got into character creation, even though my book's about character creation, and I'm not sure that was the right choice, frankly. I was worried that too many mechanics right up front would scare you before I hooked you with all my beautiful lore, but nobody gives a shit about your lore until they like the game. So maybe putting the setting in the first couple of chapters isn't the best idea. And make a document that you can print and bring to games. Leave room in the margins for notes. Give it to your players so they can make notes. Even if you're playing from tablets or your PC, people still, for the most part, and again, this might be an age thing, still love making notes and playing with paper. Do your playtesters the service of bringing them something paper to play on. This was $130, and I made 5 of them for my playtesters back in the day when I had a job. And it definitely improved gameplay because I could just put this in front of my guys and be like, holy shit, that almost looks like a game. They're more inclined to play it then. I probably, this was an 80% done book. You don't need your quick start or your playtest to be quite this big. But having something analog and tangible, I think, is part of the reason a lot of us still play the games, even if we're playing digitally, is like we like our paper, we like our dice, we like our pencils and all of that. And then art. So highly controversial, of course, right now with AI having exploded in the last couple of years. I suspect that this is a thing where the vocal minority still drives the narrative that is, don't use AI art. I will support that of don't use AI art. But that's just from my having built a relationship with artists whose jobs it is to take money from me to make beautiful books like NewEdo. AI is getting better and better every day, and people that say they can tell the difference are probably lying now, depending on the complexity of the art that you're creating. But publishing a game with AI in it will reduce your audience because some people will simply click no. Yeah.
I also want to speak to liability because a lot of worldwide places are putting in AI legislature, so that could impact how you're able to publish everything.
Yeah. So the comment that came was that liability is currently in its Wild West stage, but will eventually become more solidified, such that if your work can very easily be proved to be derivative of something else that is copyrighted or protected, then your whole book may be going into the dustbin or until it's materially reworked anyways. Art is expensive, very expensive. I was fortunate enough to have a good job at the time, and I spent $3,000 or $4,000 on NewEdo's art before it went to Kickstarter. That's a fake it till you make it thing because it makes it look very professional because I paid for fancy art. Faking it till you make it helps, but during your play test and your layout stage, just grab stuff from Pinterest or Instagram. Put it into your book, especially in places where your playtest document, especially in places where you're not using tropes. If you've got a unique idea that it's hard for characters to understand the visual on, drop something in there that's a placeholder to help them bridge the gap between your imagination and their imagination. Don't worry about putting placeholder art into a playtest document because you're not selling it. Be careful with how you share it. Don't sell it. All artists use each other as references anyway. So you as a writer are now using art for inspiration, as long as you're not trying to present it as a commercial product at this point. But having placeholder art will, one, improve your layout as you start to think about it, and two, help fill in the gaps of imagination from your players. And when you get to the point of paying your artists eventually, having placeholder art's necessary. They need to see what you want. When I first started doing this, it was stick figures. I was drawing stick figures for my artists. Like, look, I want a scene like this because I have no art skills. And then it would be grabbing something from Pinterest and saying, use something like this, and making sure that they didn't just copy it. I had one artist that was a little too close, and that he didn't end up getting published after I paid him, of course. But finding artists, Instagram, Reddit. At the start, I used Fiverr. Honestly, my logo comes from Fiverr. That thing. I paid $40 for it. But build a relationship with one or two artists as you get into this, as you start to be willing to spend money on it. It isn't cheap. Like a small piece of art, 3 inches by 6 inches, if it's color, will cost you $150. That's Canadian, maybe $100 US, euro, 100. A full page scene will cost you $200 or $300, no problem. Yeah, go ahead.
Do you think it depends on the level of finish you're looking for, though? Like, if you're looking for something more preliminary to use as placeholders throughout.
Oh yeah, no, I would say don't bother paying for placeholder art unless you like. I've got $500 to spend on my placeholder just to develop my world. I really want someone to draw a Draco Gorgon, which doesn't exist, but I created it in my game, and so I went and found an artist I'm going to start to build a relationship with, and pay them $300 to create a cool scene with a Draco Gorgon. Then do so. But if unless you're at the point where you think you're going to start making money either on Kickstarter or because you're going to start putting it on shelves, you don't need to spend it really. But the level of finish, $150 will get you a polished 3 by 6 inch image. But again, getting back to question one from way back at the start of this thing, what's your goals? And if you want this to be on a bookshelf somewhere, a sketch or a loose or a rough image book will reduce. It will create a very specific audience. There's very cool art that is not polished and finished, but will cost the same as polished and finished art just because it's still high quality. There's bad art that costs the same as finished art. That's just bad art. And then it's all subjective, of course, here, so I'm going to get in trouble. But don't expect to save money, I think is probably what I'm saying.
And then more so for things like diagrams, what have you, maybe go for some cheaper commissions so that you have more money.
For diagrams, the comment was that diagrams and some like non-finished art stuff is cheaper. Like what? Like a table or flow chart. 99% of us need to do that ourselves. So a comment was that you could pay someone else to do flow charts, tables, minor design elements. Depending on what you're looking for the finish of your book, either you don't need those things, like you don't need a kind of a rough idea of what the borders are going to look like in your book until you're getting ready to be published. And then unless you want your book to have rough, unfinished borders, you just don't need them. Tables should just stay Excel tables until publication. Or if you're good at it, you can use yourself use slides or sheets or any of these like free software to finagle how they look to improve the visual quality without still spending money. But I would suggest that your game might have 50 tables, borders, and flowcharts, and if you give each of them $10 or $20, there's still, $500 or $1,000 that is probably going to get thrown out when you actually get to publication anyways. This is a bigger picture thing. Every one of us is going to wear a lot of hats, and I didn't know it. Like I'm not an artist, but I had to learn through this process how to use free software to make things look nice. And if you think, oh, I can't do that, I can do it. You can do it. It may take some time, and that's where we get back to inspiration. Inspiration isn't stealing. Artists always use not always, but a lot of artists are inspired by other artists. Layout and table design and border design can be the same. I'd like it to look like this. A movie, a video game, another book, whatever it may be. Get a free piece of software, spend 12 hours learning how to copy that. And then once you learn how to copy it, change it such that you can use it in your book. It's an investment that will save you a lot of money down the road, and you may end up enjoying, unless you know for sure your book is going to make a lot of money and you're just going to pay $10 a page for someone to do all the layout. Chasing intermediary finish, like between playtesting and publication, is good for you to conceptualize what your finished product is going to look like, but I wouldn't recommend spending a lot of money on it unless you're rich. And then go nuts. Sorry to disagree with you.
Well, I'm just interested in it from an artist's perspective.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Vested interest. Yeah. Okay, that's it for art. So, question, yes.
I want to get your take on two things. So the first one, and not to sound conceited, but just for the sake of asking the question. I'm a very good artist and a very good graphic designer.
Okay.
Do you go the free avenue, doing it yourself as you can? In this workshop so far, you've leveraged ways to cut time and speed up the process and make yourself more efficient. My game is significantly smaller than yours in terms of page number. But if I had to do all of the artwork myself for your book, it'd take me years, right? But that would be 3 years. What's your take?
So, question was, if you're a good artist and you've written a book and you're getting to the point where you might want to put it on shelves, should you do the art yourself? Is that effectively it?
Yeah, and also add to that, like, I'm a trained graphic designer as well, right? Nothing stopped me from doing this whole thing by myself. But I've advocated personally to not do it because I don't want to.
Yeah.
But that's free and slow.
Well, so doing things yourself, layout will become repetitive. the way you style a border or a table or a chapter heading will be the same on page 1 as on page 300. So if you can do that yourself, fucking do it. 100%. Art, like you said, it's going to take a lot of time depending on how long your book is, how many pieces of art you want. Like, I had to research how many pieces of art should be in a book. I didn't know. I've been playing RPGs since the early 80s, and the answer is 1 every 2 pages. Now, you can have fewer DCC, and there's a lot of games out there that just don't bother because they're looking to get content out. They don't want to be an expensive book. It doesn't need to be flashy. NewEdo turned out to be a flashy book. But if you've got a 200-page book, that's probably 100 pieces of art. Can you do that yourself? Is it going to delay publication by 3 years? Do you need to rush publication? No. Then do it yourself. Yeah.
In a similar vein, how do you feel about using a single artist for the entire thing, perhaps for the purpose of better negotiating a price or leveraging royalties or something, or keeping it all consistent? Like I have an artist for my playtest document, or sorry, my submission copy for publishers that I made a while back, and it looks great because of that. And I love her art, and I'd love to use her for all of it, right? Again, that'll slow things down, but do you feel like with having dealt with artists that like the bulk buy is good, or page per page sort of thing?
No, if you use 2 or 3 core artists and get them to create a color palette to go across each of their art, and they'll have slight differences between them. We want to encourage those differences. Consistency is important. There's 22 artists in NewEdo, but many of them only have 1 submission because I was going through the process of trying to get the book to publication, so I needed 120 pieces of art. And so Kate and Damier created 60 or 70% of my art, and then the other 20 artists created 40%.
Gotcha.
That kind of thing. And so that was a time constraint because I probably overpromised on delivery during Kickstarter. Said I'll have it to you in 2 years, and echo, my bad. Yeah, so I sped things up by adding more artists, keeping style relatively similar. But you know, if you flip through the pages, you can see that there's a lot of different artists with a similar enough style. But short answer, yes. Use 2 artists if you can. And if you're one of those artists, fantastic. Stick to a color palette. Don't have disparate colors. You know, it's one of those subtle things that our brain will see. If everything is purple, greens, blues, and a couple of pages use a lot of yellows, it'll stand out and seem discordant. But just your artist will know that better. Well, you'll know that, but a lot of us artists will know that better than us. Building that relationship will, 1, foster good art, 2, get you a discount. You know, when I go to one of my artists and say, I'd like to commission 30 pieces, that's going to pay, frankly, their rent for a couple of months. And so they're happy to give me a little bit of a discount and say, okay, I'm not putting any more projects on my table for these 2 months. Russ, I'm all yours. Let's do it. And then it's a lot of time and work back and forth, of course. But then that saves me 20%, right? Fantastic. Consistency, helping out the people that help you build your world, and saving money. Hannah?
Branching off of that, do you think that promising royalties to artists is like an idea to use to help like decrease how much you have to pay upfront, or like I don't know?
So the question was, should you be paying royalties to decrease your upfront costs? I floated that early on with some artists, but they hear that as I don't have a budget, and they're probably right. And if you're offering royalties, they're going to expect that they're going to make less money than just their commission rate. So you're either going to get subpar work, or it's going to complicate the negotiation process. Stick to their posted rates. 90% of commercial artists will have a rate card that you can just ask them for, and it will show you exactly how much it costs for a bust of sketch quality, black and white quality, full render, blah, 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 full character, background, no background, full page, blah, blah, blah. I haven't done any royalties. I had an artist recently quote me for royalties, and it was an exorbitant rate. It was something like a tangible integer of future sales, and it was only for one or two pieces. And so either it was never, oh, plus they wanted an upfront flat rate too. The art was incredible, but it simply wasn't feasible that way. And I worry that if the book never ended up selling and I paid them $12 because of the shitty royalties, they wouldn't come back or they'd be disappointed. I'm sure that there's a lot of feedback from artists with different perspective on that of whether royalties are a great way, especially if you're going to get an artist who's at the start of their career. So I couldn't make it work myself, but there's definitely probably a way to do so. What do you think about royalties instead of an upfront rate?
I've never seen anyone do royalties. I've only ever seen people do commissions.
Yeah. The answer was I've never seen it done commercially for royalties either. Now, I know it happens because I've just been asked for royalties and I said no. Kieran?
Legal issues that probably will come, and one of the reasons you don't hear about royalties is most of those projects don't work out. Just to throw it out there, there was a rather big Call of Cthulhu video game made called The Sinking City that was delisted from everywhere due to this.
Royalties and basic application, your book is gone and all that funding has vanished out of the system. Now, all it's gone to lawyers, you have no local funds. So it's probably never really trying to join contracts, especially if you don't have the funding.
The answer was legality complications may tank your project if you're still paying royalties. Matthew?
What is your opinion on skill shares where people agree to trade work with one another for projects? Is it the same line? Or
well, skill share in what way? Like
one person needs a layout person, the other person is artist, and you just swap skills in order to get something done.
I would write it into a contract and say it's an exchange of value. Question, in case the mic didn't work, was can a layout artist trade layout to a design artist or a writer skill share, for equal value? And I would say just exchange contracts as if those had dollar value amounts on them. I've done $500 worth of layout for you. You've given me $500 worth of art. Write it down, that kind of thing. Great idea for sure. Salty Games ended up being mostly me with playtesters and people I paid to do things, except for both my moms or my editors, and I don't pay them. So thanks, moms. But I'm always in awe and impressed by small game studios that end up being more than just one person because they've found a group of like-minded folk to develop a specific project or group of projects that one's an artist, one's a layout artist, one's a writer, one's an editor, one's a marketer, all of that. If you can find that, foster it. Fuck the paperwork. Like is you guys you get into a point where you eventually have to think of business ideas where you're writing a partnership agreement down and stuff like that in case of success. Don't be a victim of your own success. But yes, like if you've got the time to do layout, someone's got the time to do the editing, then do it that way for sure. Sorry, Lauren.
I was gonna say, even if you don't have like a group of people together, you can genuinely find people in art spaces who are willing to do trades or graphic design or what have you. So you can always ask. We're always open to making deals like that.
Oh yeah, there's a whole server on Discord for it. I was just curious what Ross's opinion was because the royalties obviously brought up a good idea. So I was just curious.
Yeah, there's a back and forth there, folks. That just an artist encouraged Matthew to use artists in a Skillshare perspective, and I just never came across it for the most part.
It's more common in indie spaces.
I'm an indie developer now. This is. These are all indie artists too. Like everyone I used here was on Reddit looking for commissions. I didn't. Oh no, I'm not saying that your circle is wrong. It's more that I found these folks on Reddit or Instagram. reached out to them. I wrote most of the contracts myself. The quality varies, of course, in the matching of my theme and stuff like that. But the community, maybe I was just too upfront with being willing to offer money, and they all took me up on it. Instead of saying, "Hey, well, can we work some way around this? I'll do some writing for one of your projects if you'll do some art for one of mine," that kind of thing. Okay, we're still on line 1 of what you need for publishing. Okay. It's 3 o'clock. Okay, still doing good. Say what you need if you're going to be publishing your game book. You need a tested game with clear goals. A nearly finished product without art or layout, but something that has been tested to hell, that has an identity, that you can identify its target audience and compare to other games. Because when you go out into the world, you have to say, my game is like X, but Y. Otherwise, people are like, well, how? Because you can see it in your head, but no one else can see what's in your head, probably for the better. It needs a hook, a catch, or a differentiator. Why should they play your game if Shadowrun already exists? Why should they play your game if 5e already exists? The term heartbreaker is from people that rewrite fantasy games because they just want to write a fantasy game that ends up being the same thing as 5e and failing because 5e exists. Those exist, and there's been successes with them, but why should people put down this book to pick up your book? Make sure you can identify that. And you have to be, kind of circling back to this conversation, willing to learn a lot. You're going to have to do a lot of things that you're not good at. Art, layout, marketing, which we're barely going to touch on today because I fucking suck at. Recognize that at a lot of this point, you're going to get frustrated because you've written the game, you enjoy the game, but there's parts of it that need to get done that you don't have a budget for. You have to learn. There's free software for 90% of this. Everyone can self-publish for free. Well, printing costs money, but the software is out there for us all to do this for free. But you just have to be willing to learn. Should you approach publishers to publish your game for you? I didn't even try.
I sure did.
You sure did. Let's hear from Andre. I'm going to give you back the cam and the mic on your brief experience with taking a very good product to publishers. One sec. Grab that.
This one here.
So give a little summary of where you thought Aventus was and what you've done.
Yeah, so I happened to work with somebody at... I'm going to get closer to it?
No, further from it.
Oh, further from it. Okay.
There you
go. My voice is too powerful.
Yeah.
I happened to work with somebody that was a publishing agent at a different job, and she worked with fiction novels, like nothing to do with tabletop RPGs, but the relationship in product was simply that at the end of the day, it's a book, right? So if I want this game to manifest, it needs to be in a book, and the people that do that are publishers. So let's give it a whirl. And I was fortunate because we knew each other, and she was down for it. She represents a ton of different books, and why not represent another one? But at the time that I had met my agent, I was still just finishing a final hurdle of playtesting. So if I were to say where I was, out of like version 7 where I'm at, I was at about version 5, right? And what she wanted from me were certain milestones to be hit so that we can have what agents often use when approaching publishers is a submission copy. It's kind of like a PowerPoint made into a document with all of the materials and assets that you would want to be integrated. As I kind of alluded before, I am a graphic designer by trade and an artist, but I had met one of her artists for children's books, and so she helped me make some really good stuff, and I have a high fidelity chapter example that would look like it's good for printing, right? We had a deadline in mind, which was actually very good because it gave me perspective and kind of kept me accountable for a schedule. I've actually never really had an issue, luckily, with like staying focused on a project. Maybe it's like that ADD hyper-focus thing that happens, but I haven't been able to put this game down for the last like 3 years, and I never will until it's on a book, and I probably won't stop after. But October was a deadline, and the book needed to be done. So we finished the book, play tested it as much as I possibly could within the network and the means that I had. And I think if I could speak to that experience, it's very hard to have that stamina going forward to a deadline and then just give it to somebody else and hope that they're doing their job with it. And the hardest part for me was trusting, if I can be honest, the process, in that the agent was reaching out and talking to publishers and representing it to the best of her abilities, because she also has a bunch of other books that she's working with. I ended up ending that relationship a couple months ago because it just wasn't working for me, and we were seeking a publisher for about 4 months. That's basically it, until I decided to maybe do it myself, or like not do it at all. I don't know. For me, that felt like a very unfortunate and defeating moment where I had finished the project and it was all steam ahead. I gave it to an agent and then it went completely nowhere. We did approach about 11 major publishers. Game publishers, TTRPG specific publishing houses. I only ever heard back from one. And their response was very candid but very useful, in that in general the space for publishing a game requires that the game has kind of existed in circles for quite some time, and now it's at such an established point that we want to turn, almost an example like a game like NewEdo, into like a massive commercial success. We're going to print you thousands of books, maybe get you new artists. That's when we're interested. Nobody knows if your game is good, so we're not interested.
When you no longer need them is when we're interested.
Exactly. Essentially. Well, they're sort of that like explosive milestone, right? So like if you think of something like Root was a board game, right? It did commercially incredibly, and then a TTRPG, Hit Point Press, picked them up and made them a book, right? So that was my experience. I can thankfully say, like, it didn't really cost me anything. Mostly like the emotional weight of it not succeeding that way. But we're to different paths and like seeking a different way of doing that all. But I did find that the traditional pathway to publishing is really more appropriate for novels. TTRPGs sort of manifest a lot like I think video games do. And a publisher is not interested in picking up your video game until it's been played and it's been made. So that's my hot take. Don't do it.
Don't do it. I did not go through that process because by organic nature of things, the book just kept ticking along till I took it to Kickstarter. And then after that, I'm like, fuck, I guess I'm doing this by myself. And then I had the money because of the first Kickstarter where it raised 33 grand to pay a bunch of money to artists and the free time at the time somehow to bring it to a finished state, or good enough, 95% kind of thing. Since then, I've integrated or spoken with a lot more developers who are at my stage where they've got a book on the shelf or a couple of books on the shelf, and they're always looking to buy small games. One person approached me offering to buy NewEdo for a comically small amount of money, thinking like, "Hey man, you've got it here. You're not negative on it. I'll give you X," which X was not a lot of money, "and I'll take it from there." Seeing its potential effectively, trying to recreate in small what a big publisher house wants to do with something they see a market for. So there is a chance that you can get something to a stage that someone else might want to buy it, and that someone else might not have to be Modifius or a big entity. But if they see the potential, you could probably just make that money yourself. It was a low $1,000 amount, and that's what this made last month, kind of thing. Like, fuck you. No. Respectfully, fuck you. So, Andre's experience and my experience are very limited. These are anecdotal. But as far as I can tell from all of the conversations I've had everywhere with folks that have gotten to gold bestsellers, 500 to 1,000 books sold, is that you're going to have to do it yourself. And that's not a bad thing. You keep control. You own your IP. You don't have to give it up. It means you're going to be doing a lot of work, but you didn't get into this to make a ton of money anyways. And you want to see your product come to market the way you intended it, not bastardized in some way, shape, or form. So save yourself the time, I guess, is what we're saying, and don't chase that down too hard. These are just two voices, of course, but you'd be hard pressed to have something that looks great, is tons of fun, according to your 30 Discord channel, 30-person Discord channel, to have anyone's going to pay you any money for it. Certainly not worth your time so far. So back to what Andre said, you need proof to make it worthwhile too. Not only to a big publisher, but for an audience willing to buy it. That proof comes from the form of reviews, podcasts, actual plays by you, by strangers, by taking it to conventions. Get your game out there once it's at a place where you can show it off, with a little bit of it doesn't look ugly so far. Create that content, record your plays, even if it's just you and your friends. If you can get other people to play your games, that's incredible. They will record it for you and give you that content. Look on Reddit for various actual plays, but there's 5 or 6 groups of players that do this intentionally with tiny RPGs. They'll pick them up, play them, and then give them very honest and hard feedback afterwards. I had fun with this. This wasn't fun. Here's our professional podcast. That becomes part of your library for selling your game. It gets the word out there. Reviewers are important, and that's just money. It's to get a reviewer to review your game is the same as getting a publisher to want to publish it. They don't want to spend their time on it unless there's people that already want to hear about that game. So you're usually not paying for reviews, or you're usually, not getting reviews, you're paying for reviews, which work fantastically. They're not presented as reviews. They're reviewed by reviewers. They're paid ads. Do it. Definitely worthwhile. Find a reviewer that's kind of in your square of how much you can afford to pay, and they'll create a 2-minute, 5-minute, 20-minute review, not presenting it as a review, but it's in the stream as a review, and their audience will think that they reviewed it. You've paid them $500 or $1,000 or something like that, but you get access to a much bigger audience. Incredible marketing value, far more than Instagram or Facebook or anything like that. So then we get into crowdfunding. Who's considering it? Scares the shit out of you? You're considering it eventually? Have you done it, Matthew? No? I think that, so crowdfunding is all about the sizzle, because no one's getting into the meat of your game. You need it to look pretty, and you need to have enough community support to have somebody commenting on it. NewEdo didn't have a huge community when it went to Kickstarter. Maybe 30 or 40 people were playing the game, had played it, stuff like that. So I made up for that lack of community with sizzle by spending $3,000 on art. And by laying out my original Kickstarter campaign the same or similar to some of the bigger campaigns. Take the time to make it look pretty. Make a video, make headers, don't just have text and all that stuff. I know that I got very lucky with the timing on NewEdo. $30,000 then, I wouldn't get it now because people don't have the money that they did in 2021. If you go into Kickstarter or any of the other crowdfunding campaigns with a humble goal of $2,000 or $3,000, but enough sizzle, 2 or 3 images, some player reviews, not professional reviews, and having copied the style of successful Kickstarters, you probably make $3,000. And then that $3,000 can be used to add to your book, as long as you don't promise it'll get finished for that $3,000. Release an adventure with the money from that or something like that. Managing the funds from Kickstarter is tricky because you don't know what you're going to get. You don't know exactly how much it's going to cost to make your book. There's variable costs. If I have 10,000 orders and it costs $30 each, that's $30,000. So where's my campaign? What do I ask for? Taxes is, don't forget taxes. But the fixed costs of, okay, I need X to finish my book in art. I need Y to add to it for editing, Z for layout. And then whatever other auxiliary price costs there may be, but those are your three major ones. Those are fixed costs. So those fixed costs to finish your book at $2 a page for editing, $10 a page for layout, and $100 to $200 per page or per art image should be the basis of what you set your campaign at. And if all of that is $5,000 and you set your campaign at $2,000 just so you'll succeed, you won't finish your product. You'll hit your $2,000 and maybe you'll hit 20 grand and get lucky. But if you get the $2,500, now you're going to break a bunch of promises to people. Either your book will come out with half the amount of art that you expected or wanted to, or no layout, or take 3 extra years because you're doing the art yourself. If you go into Kickstarter or any crowdfunding, be incredibly honest with yourself and with your audience about what they're gonna get out of it. You're gonna get a 200-page book with lots of art like these sample pages, and the sample pages just have to be 5 or 6 sample pages. The time frame is going to be within 1 year or 2 years. Don't make it 3; no one will back you. If you aren't quite sure when you're going to be done, then you're not ready to take it to Kickstarter. It should be tested at that point. You should have a document that all it needs is some placeholder art dropped in, or sorry, real art dropped in where there's placeholder art, proper layout, maybe a finished editing run through, stuff like that. An ISBN bar put on the back of it. That's when you go to Kickstarter. NewEdo, frankly, was at 80% of where it should have been. And I spent 18 months gruelingly grinding it up. Now, it was thankfully played. It just needed a lot more work than I thought it did, because it looked like this. And that looks pretty good as far as a game book goes. I'm like, this is good enough. But as I can... worse or just different appetite, right? I set myself a goal of, like, I think my Kickstarter goal was $8,000 and I raised 33. Immediately, a bunch of that goes away to Kickstarter, of course. But then the sample pages I used were high color, good quality art every 2 pages, and this wasn't that. And so I couldn't publish this. I had to go out and get 200 fucking pieces of art to fill this damn thing. So thankfully, the Kickstarter was good enough to pay for that, but then that took a lot more time than I was expecting. So have your document that is no longer your playtest document. It's your version 0.9 document at a state where all you have to do is open it up and drop in professional art where there's playtesting art. That's when you go to Kickstarter. Big companies are currently using Kickstarter as a sniff test for concepts. And so you see games that are not developed at all. They probably haven't even been started writing to see if there's an appetite for people to play a game about neon dragons in the Middle Ages in Polynesia. And if there's demand for it, then they'll go and write that game and art that game out, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It actually sounds like an awesome game. But the rest of us have to have a product that can be finished and delivered, because go and read some of the nightmare stories about Kickstarter and just how fucking hard it is. And the failures. We've all probably backed a Kickstarter that failed to deliver, or delivered a product that just was not what they promised. And if you do that, you will never publish a book again. Like that, you get one shot at making people happy. And the community, the vocal minority of folks that keep track of this shit are going to be the ones that go to the next one, identify your failure, and call you out next time. So don't half-ass it for the sake of trying to make a quick $3,000. 1, because $3,000 is not enough for your book. And 2, you'll never publish another book ever again. Another game book in this community, blah, 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 blah. You can go the solo route if you find $30,000 to spend your own money on, if you don't need the crowdfunding. But communication with your audience is incredibly key. Be on Kickstarter every single day. Once your campaign starts, communicate. There should be an update every 2 days with how it's going, where you're at, how you're feeling. Hopefully not a ton of new goals, but just feedback. Once your Kickstarter campaign concludes, communication every month at the most. Like, update them with where you are, what you've done, how you've taken their money and put it to good use. I used $2,000 for layout today. Here's some new art I just spent $4,000 on. Look at all these cool pages, blah, 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 blah. I was taking longer than I thought I would to get NewEdo to publication, but I continued to communicate and be honest with my failures. Hey guys, this is taking a lot longer. Look at this cool thing. I just found this new artist. They're doing pages 62, 28, and 99. Look at this. That's amazing. You're going to get published. The game is going great. Don't worry, but it's taking me more time. And you get a bit of criticism, but mostly support from that kind of communication. don't offer complicated rewards like tokens. So, in an attempt to make more money, once NewEdo started steamrolling, I created a bunch of tokens for use in play. They're great. They're really useful in play because it's a complicated game. So why not have something that keeps track of your health and your all of that stuff? I have 60 different ones of these. I've created them all myself, and then I had to pack them all in different combinations for 600 orders. Don't do it. Just don't do it. They're really cool though. Nobody uses them anymore, but they're really cool. Now, making a Kickstarter unique by offering something that folks can only get during Kickstarter, highly recommend. People like us that like to play these games love collector's editions. We want to have a limited edition something. We want to have a unique something that the artist has signed or the author has signed. NewEdo has Founders editions. There's only 50 of these each. I missed out on making only 47 of them. That the first one, I was stupid. I redid the layout completely. All new layout for the Founders edition. Same art, I modified every piece of art. This was 6 additional months of work. So for the 77 Stories Founders, they have the same interior. But there's only 50 of them, and I hand-signed all of them. That kind of thing goes far. These sell out immediately during Kickstarter. Gone. Immediate. So there's $2,000 during Kickstarter, I knew I was going to get. So that kind of thing that you can connect to without adding to your logistical nightmare is important. I know we're getting pretty far down the road from where you guys might be at the moment, but I'm trying to cover a very broad spectrum, so my apologies. And I'm happy to talk about any of this on Discord later on. I know that this is a very brief introduction from going from kitchen table to game store, but so that's why I'm covering all this shit. Yeah, that's it for crowdfunding. Questions there, because I'm sure people were thinking about it.
How were you able to keep good on certain tangibles?
Perhaps you had never made a book to print, or you'd never seen those things. Did you have that lined up before you went into the Kickstarter? Like, you knew who your bookbinding company would be, you knew where your tokens would be made, had those prices set up, then you went to Kickstarter, or that manifested because you got a large following when you exceeded that by a lot, through 33K there? I would say for me, that's perhaps my biggest barrier to wanting to do a Kickstarter, is that if you did give me like 50, now I wouldn't know what to do with it. I would just have it.
So I'm just playing with mics. I had costed out the books using various different publishing entities, notably Mixam, Mixam, is a great broad spectrum publisher that can get you a book quickly. It won't be the cheapest, but it will be very good quality. They print NewEdo for $40 Canadian, call it. And it's a 300-page book full art. Now that's with an order of 300 or 400. It'll be, if you're going to print 30 or 40 books, the cost is probably closer to $60 or $70, and then you're obviously not making any money, but at least you'd have one out there. So I costed them out, expecting that, okay, if I sell 100 copies, which is what my goal was for Kickstarter, they're going to cost me $48 each. So I knew where I'd be getting them and how much they'd cost. I did the same with the tokens. Actually, the tokens were made here at Mecca Games. Thanks, Kevin. I costed them out before I added them as an add-on to my campaign. So I knew that I didn't think about the logistics, but I thought about the cost. So I didn't lose money on these. I lost money on my time. But, Mark?
Like, I know there's the Canadian Media Fund, or would that be more applicable if you were incorporated?
You don't have to be. The question was, is it worth considering grants? I kind of went too quickly for that. I don't know that there's a grant that would have applied for me, kind of thing, but I may have just been wrong through ignorance. I was very fortunate enough to be able to spend the $4,000, and if the Kickstarter went nowhere, I would have still been okay. I'm a very different situation now, but because now I'm a game developer, so I'm poor. But but look at every source, absolutely. Um,
Canadian media might be a good starting place because I know that they sponsor different types of media, including games and visual and audio and entertainment.
or whether or not they do tabletop, some sort of hobbying. Yeah. The comment being that there's guaranteed to be grants out there for folks in our sphere, and I don't have an answer for that. So that's a great little piece of research for folks to look into. Yes.
I work with grants a lot.
So the thing is, Canadian government grants are really hard to get. You can definitely try. I don't know if you have to like pay an amount of money to make sure like that you're like serious about it, because sometimes some grants do ask you to pay some money up front. But I'm sure like if you find like, I don't know, like smaller grants or whatever like that don't require that, like definitely put into it. But yeah, the Canadian government grants are really, really, really hard to get. So
Is that one a government grant, the media fund?
it might be. I would look into it, but it kind of sounds like it might be one.
My last job was in the public sector with museums. I did good design consulting, and the public sector only funds with grants. I'll be the first to say that they are incredibly challenging to get. They're hard to keep when you get. They require certain milestones, and generally speaking, you have to have capital up front to show that you've already invested in the projects going forward. When it comes to any public sector grant, provincial, municipal, or federal, it's you and every other bajillion people that are applying for that same grant as well. I would say if you were going to get a grant, you would need to be close to, if not at the precipice of publishing for the government to use taxpayer dollars to fund your idea.
Even for like private funding?
Private funding isn't a grant in that case. That would just be a benefactor. You would just be getting a rich person to give you money, like a patron. At that point, you can absolutely, and likely that would.
There's not-for-profits that also will fund media.
And they'll usually require some kind of upfront capital again on your part to show that you can sustain yourself through the project. That. Yeah. I mean, knowing so much about them and having applied to build museums and stuff, I never considered that even for a second for my project, because they're really hard and to get, but then also the scrutiny is massive. Like, you have to report and do things monthly, hit milestones, and if you don't, funding's pulled, you also could be held liable for extorting.
You should be doing those things.
Pardon?
You should be doing for your own benefit. If you've got a project that you want to commercialize, you should be holding yourself accountable to deadlines.
Yeah, 100%.
And all of that. So someone forcing that structure on you isn't a con.
No, it's not.
It's just something to expect.
And that's how the government protects the taxpayer dollar for going into projects that will fail.
Yes. So I did notice in my research into different grants that there is a handful of different ones done by like TTRPG communities, specifically around like creating. I saw one that was based around creating like accessible TTRPGs, and another one that was done by the creators of Wander Home, which is another like rules light TTRPG, and they were like, if you make something based off of our work, we can help like sponsor that.
Okay.
So I have noticed that there are some TTRPG communities essentially that do small grants towards this kind of work.
Yeah, they're paying it forward. They found success in the community that they're paying back into. That's a great line of research. If your game is like X, does X community support itself through these kind of grants? And again, that's where my ignorance during the development of NewEdo would have failed me, because I just wasn't doing any research. I had my head up my ass writing this game. Also, I don't know if the Cyberpunk or Shadowrun community is big into fostering other competitive games, but Wander Home, or if you're developing a less cutthroat style game, possibly. But I mean, again, not to assume anything. Okay. Okay, we went through these last points here actually already, that you can never have enough editors. Once you get to the point where you're thinking of having the game published, have lots of readers, particularly readers who are not game players, because they'll catch things that your game players skim over because they already know what the sentence says. But they'll miss grammar and spelling and stuff like that because they know where this goes. Yeah, when you roll X, you succeed. Oh, obviously, but it doesn't say succeed, it says success or something like that. Layout cost $1 to $3 per, or sorry, editing cost $1 to $3 per page professionally, and they don't care how good your writing is for the most part. If it's terrible, they may just say no. But that's why I'm saying don't spend too much time trying to make it perfect because you're still going to get charged the same either way. And layout is between $6 and $10 per page just for layout. You're going to have to look at paying another $2 to $5 per page for formatting. If you want to format for print on demand, that's not layout. If you want to format for Kindle, that's not layout. For e-reader, that's not layout. That's something a good layout artist can do, but is addition to the $6 to $10 per page. And if you're publishing, you probably want to be able to publish in a print on demand format. I didn't get print on demand for 2 years after NewEdo went live because I did my own layout and I didn't know how to create that format. And so it took me forever to get a format that people could purchase in Australia and not have to pay $100 in shipping. Sorry, Australia, you guys paid $100 for shipping for a while. A few people were committed to the game. They paid $100 literal dollars, more than the game costs. And then fulfillment and logistics is a nightmare. Just pay someone else to do it. If you get to a point you publish your book, it costs $3 to have someone ship it for you. Send a pallet of books to Studio 2, someone like that. I haven't done this. I ship out of my basement still. Fucking hate it. Love you guys. That's in addition to shipping, of course, but they manage all of it. An order comes in through your website, they pack it, they send it out, they charge the customer shipping, all of that stuff. Their shipping is probably cheaper than your shipping, so the customer is probably not paying anything extra. You're losing $2 to $3 for logistic fulfillment, but it is worth the hassle. The only thing that you'll be missing out on is if any of you guys got a book shipped by me, well, most of you will have unless you have print on demands, they were all touched by hand. And so they all have brown paper wrapping and a custom stamp and stuff like that. That's the kind of thing that a 3PL studio won't necessarily do unless you're paying them extra per unit. If I have nice brown paper I wrap around every NewEdo book and I put a stamp on it, they would do so. I would have to send them those pieces of paper and they charge an extra $1 per to wrap it around. Still sometimes worth it because that personal touch helps build the zeitgeist of a small game. They part of the community and stuff like that. But is that worth your hassle of shipping out of your basement? Depends whether you've got 100 units, 50 units, or 1,000 units. That's the end of my TED Talk. Thank you, guys. Wasn't expecting a round of applause. Yeah. Questions? What haven't we covered?
Honestly, was really eager to hear that last part, and I'm glad you covered it in some good detail. I think that's perhaps one of the most challenging things to research effectively, because it's either discussed online at a incredible macro level, where you're I don't know, like part of the Tolkien estate and you need 6 million books created, right? Or it's on such a small micro level that the prices just completely don't make any sense. You don't really understand where that comes from. Like, how do I make a small, booklet and it's $100? How do I even give that to somebody? So like getting that in between, it really sounds like you have to reach that 90% completion spot to approach the Kickstarter. But once that funding comes in, it does unlock a lot of that in between the micro and macro possibility of ordering things and getting the ball rolling. That after this talk, I feel is perhaps a lot less intimidating and confusing. It just sort of sounds like you've secured some good money, you're going to do good on your word, and now you can afford doing it the way that you kind of thought you would by going on a split mix somewhere or whatever and just having somebody send you a book. You're still shipping out of your basement, right? Having that extra layer after once that success comes in. If you have the capital, or if you want to, I wouldn't have known to do that. I would have just only known to do it from my basement, like it's very good, very useful. It was awesome.
Glad. I mean, I need to find a way to unlock the rest of the last 6 years or 5 years of actual publishing and 10 years of development to make this more useful for everybody. And so that medium, I don't know what that will be. There's so many good resources out there for if you're still in the design phase of your game. Research them. Game design is a common topic. I'm just one anecdote in that. My strength or my leverage value for the community is that I somehow got to it being published, right? And there's not a lot of public information on it, especially from a small medium perspective like this. There's a lot smarter people that have conversations about game design than me. Go read theirs if you want to know about your math, your statistics, your development, your player progression, your style, all that stuff. But I hope to offer more information on how to make it a book. And the punchline is you're going to probably end up doing it yourself, but it's definitely doable. Like a couple hundred hours of work. Once your game's there, you'll end up with something that you can take to your local game store.
Question online.
Yeah.
We have thoughts on selling via physical game shop, like from the local game stores.
So once I had copies of NewEdo, I took them to game stores. I didn't have a ton extra because Kickstarter only paid for a certain number, and I grabbed maybe 80 extra, and I sold those on my website, which we haven't even talked about. You should have a website, even if it's a very basic one, that doesn't sell anything but provides information on your game. This game store took my games and put it on their shelf, and they sell it, and they keep a certain commission. One other game store paid me a wholesale rate and took the risk themselves. That's nicer because they bought 5 books from me at $55 or something like that, and so there goes 5 of my books, and now I made, frankly, $15 per book, which isn't a lot, but it's cool. This game store says, we'll put them on your shelf, and these guys are fantastic because they talk me up constantly, and I've met a lot of the community because of the great work done at this game store. Some people in this room for sure, but also like the reason I'm doing this is because this game store keeps talking about me, which is awesome. Your game store will put your book on the shelf, whether they're doing it based on commission or most of them won't be buying it from you. They'll probably just give you a cut when they sell it. You can get it into game stores. Like I've had game stores reach out to me to say, can I buy these? But like a game store in Kentucky that wants to buy 6 books of NewEdo, I still have to pay for shipping to Kentucky. And yeah, exactly. And so, and they're accustomed to bigger publishers whose margins are 50%. My margin is 36 or 30%. And so they're only willing to pay a certain dollar amount, and then we take the shipping in, and there's no point in me doing it. It's disappointing because I would love it for it to be in every shelf out there, but am I going to go to all the effort to ship, to blah, 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 to lose money or to make 0 or whatever? The answer is no. And that's why I did print on demand, because if you can't find NewEdo locally and shipping is expensive from Southern Ontario, now you can get it printed in Australia for whatever, and plus local shipping. Yeah.
Probably this happened. Any tips for considering scrapping a huge amount of the project you're working on and redirecting it? It's not just focused on the tone of the you want.
Any tips on scrapping your project?
Starting part of a large chunk of it, because it's not as heavy focused as you.
So the question was like, how much, or if any thoughts on scrapping a significant portion of your project? Unfortunately, yeah. Like realize that may be a whole different game, or it's an expansion on your current game. Get the core out first, and then publish that expansion, or publish a second game. I've got 2 games, NewEdo and Kitchen Table Robot Games, which is a skirmish mini-based game. These little guys, and another one in like aspects of games that I think of think of a concept in a game, and then I have to cut it because it doesn't fit my design pillars. I still really like that concept, so it goes into another game. So it's not wasted effort. Just shelve it for now. Do yourself the favor of not chasing that squirrel. Like, I'm gonna force fit it together. It probably will never come together. So it's not. It hurts, but it's not time wasted, and it will make your product much better. Carve out a section of a nearly finished project that is too discordant and make 2 games. Don't do them at the same time. for your own mental health, or yeah, or go ahead and do them at the same time, whatever.
Smaller side parts, hyper focus on one right part myself.
Yeah, well, that's a good idea too. Yeah.
I think with play testing, you kind of get addicted to the process of overhaul. Like, it's so fun to have something done to show people, to realize that there's this goose egg in there that you need to remove. And I think some people get defeated and discouraged at that point. In the last 3 years, I found it absolutely addicting, where it's like, oh, I didn't see that in my own project. And then you just make more and more and more and scrap. And my game was 43 pages when I first showed it to anybody. Now I'm tickling 200. You know, it's scrapping's the best. It's like cleaning a room.
Yeah, like cleaning a room. Yeah, exactly. It's worth it afterwards.
I just believe in my room, and I like my room, so you just got to keep cleaning it.
Okay. All right, guys. Well, I am going to call this to a close. Thank you very much for coming. Thanks for folks that have sat through 3 hours of me talking for the most part and swearing extensively. I'm sorry, YouTube. I am not showable or shareable anyways, so I don't know why we went through this, but hey, we'll see what I make of this. Hopefully more resources for small developers to get their books on shelves. And please reach out via Discord, whether or not you're a part of the NewEdo community or play the game or ever want to play the game. Find us via Discord, which will be shared currently and shared in the comments later. And I'm happy to chat about this at any time.
Awesome. Very cool.
Okay, thanks guys. I'm going to shut her down.